You will not just be talking for the sake of talking. We take what you say very seriously, and this helps us to design the program for the following year. For the activities, it determines what we do the following year, how we handle the next media week. So whatever you say here today, just know that it is going to be valued and it's going to be taken seriously. I think that's it, considering that we are already 1 hour late into the program. Sean, I'll hand over to you. I just wish you all very good deliberations for the next 2 days. And feel free to say what you feel like saying. This is not a very stiff environment. Just be ready to share whatever you have to say. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
It's like you've already gone. Good day. Thank you very much. Let us welcome the members on the podium. The reason as to why they're here, they are historicals. They have seen what has happened before. They can be able to use a minute or two to just give us their experience in the past. And I'll start with Mango. You've been part of this over the past 3 editions, more so 3 years. What has been your take home, and what else do you come to bring forth in a nutshell?
Okay, thank you so much. Like I've been introduced, I'm called Sanya Emmanuel Mango. I would say I'm one of the round characters, maybe one of the few journalists who have cut across through in print, broadcast, as a journalist who has been practicing and has practiced through all those areas.
And you are a dinosaur.
And I'm a dinosaur.
Glad to join you.
When you just look at me physically, you just know this guy here is a dinosaur. And that explains why I tell you that I've worked for all these. I've been in print, I worked for Monitor as a freelancer in Busia, but I also worked for broadcast in radio, that is in Mbale, Openigate, UIUFM, Elgon, from a level of being a freelance journalist to a level of becoming a manager. But also now crossed to print, now where I'm working with the Second Opinion newspaper. For the last 3 sessions you've been here, it was a learning experience. That's the first thing that I must give. That initially when we were down there, up country, all doing our journalism, we were basing on what we had learned from school. But this engagement through the media focus and the media weeks, it really introduced a few things, some few narratives in media on how a journalist is supposed to behave, how we are trying to relate classwork and the contemporary world, and how we cover stories. Majority of us would run for civic journalism. First story, you throw it there and you run away. But with the trainings and the discussions we have had from different presenters here, we've learned a lot that journalism is not only about civic journalism. We need to do a lot. And one thing I take is that I was introduced to what we call analytical news gathering. Analytical. So you sit down, if it's not just a mere story, get back home, let what the source has given just as a hint, but you go back and cover more. And then it takes you as a lead, get a better story, package it so well, let it be so well balanced, and then you give it to the public. Leave it to the public for them to judge. But in most cases, if you are going to look at the news piece and others which are running on social media or on TV or whatever, you'll see that the story really was lacking something. Maybe one voice was not there. Then the other thing I've learned from here is that putting the face into a story is too big. Most cases, when you write the story, you leave the face the other side. You leave the people who are supposed to consume this story without being captured. You don't get their view. You only embark on the source, and that one was invited for a workshop. But in actual sense, the people you're writing for this story are not brought into the picture. So you get back, you need to bring the picture, and then, they also speak. Actually, you can call your story from the face, not exactly from the source. So one thing is analytical gathering and reporting is one thing that I take from, I can have taken from this. But it has also introduced to me now what I'm doing today, what we call development communication. Development communication journalism aims at bridging the gap, bringing all the stakeholders on board, giving a firm foundation of calling on someone to come and act positively, not to act because you want to beat and whatever. For example, if you're talking about maybe human rights abuses, you're not only talking about people being beaten and whatever, but what could be missing is someone understanding that maybe there is a law. There is something that who is in prison, someone who has been there for years. There could be someone out there who can come and speak about this. So it's not about who has been beaten on the street, but development communication calls for that and calls for action. So out of these trainings, what I've taken home is that I do believe that we are all aiming at development communication, and it's the one which is going to shape this trend of journalism as we speak today. This platform has really helped us to engage. I think this is a platform where we discuss real stuff concerning journalists. It's where I feel when I come here, I've come to talk to colleagues. And the people who come here to speak really speak from that strong background of journalism. We speak facts and say, this is the way you're supposed to do it, but you are doing it this way, which is wrong. And whoever comes here will always add something new on what we have been doing. So I think development communication has helped us, and I think that's the way to go.
And I believe that's the same thing that we might be picking up today. A lot more information, a lot more, way of doing our work properly.
Our own. As I wind up, what I've done, when I was working with Rico TV as a station manager, the programming was completely different. The programming was based on religion. But the 2 years I spent there, I changed the programming to address these issues here now into development communication. We started programs like Eco Clinic to address issues to do with the environment, which was not there. We wanted to do programs that would address issues of the needed, the disabilities, the whatever, women and so on. That's what we started doing. Then the other thing is that this platform has helped us to network. Today now we're a family. We believe in one another. You will know my brother is the other side, and if you want something, you'll always go back to that person and then and work as a team. Then lastly, it has helped us to break through. I didn't think of having an online, my own online media piece, a platform or something. But today now I'm speaking vehemently that I have a media, which I can command, which I'm putting there stuff which I think is going to change society. So out of all these discussions, I think have shaped us and helped us to grow.
Thank you very much, Mango. As we are talking about the experience that many individuals have benefited from the Media Week, of course, from Media Focus, I do believe that everyone who has come here, and also, just like Ruth mentioned, our brothers and sisters who are online, we appreciate the fact and hope you're getting the information clearly. Mr. Msinguzi, good luck. You've been here for several years, and you've attended all the editions. What has been your take-home and what's your expectations this morning, or more so today and tomorrow, in a nutshell?
Thank you very much. One thing is what he talked about, networking. But before that, I have been in this trade for almost 22 years. And I have seen associations. I have seen how we associate. I have seen the other legal part, which is called the union. I have seen others where they are trying to tackle other issues like human rights or our rights. I think when Media Focus came in, it came in with a certain brand that has, they, I think, saw a niche in online, in the new journalism that was coming. And they have been able to reach out. So for me, that is one of the big things that every year I look forward to this. Even when they came to Kabale, where I come from, I could see the way they do their plans and programs a bit different. So Media Focus has a niche, and for me, I think I have benefited a lot. In terms of networking, when COVID came and all these things Ruth was talking about, people being sacked here and there, I remember I wanted to do something with the upcountry journalists. And the only place I could run to quickly was Media Focus. So I have a feeling they are doing very well. Then my expectations is that, of course, after COVID, I don't know whether the media, we have understood the dangers that COVID has brought, but also how are we going to go through this? So my expectation is, how are we going to live post-COVID? Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. And then, Madam Ashaba Caroline, please give us your experience, your take home from this kind of gathering, this kind of conference that happens every year.
Okay, well, first I would love to appreciate Media Focus for this great initiative. I think there is no place like this that has put journalists together to engage and bring meaningful conversations that enlighten and educate journalists. I've not seen such conferences before, but this one is one of a kind. Now, as for me, every time I come to these conferences, I learn so much, and it has changed my mindset in terms of the way I was working as a journalist. And like Mango was bragging through this, well, he was right too. let me tag along. Through these dialogues, I also started my online platform, wow. One Africa Media, because these dialogues push you to look beyond what you're seeing right now, like in terms of
Did you
journalism.
start your outlet just because you attended the conference?
No, the idea
was there, but you were encouraged.
Yes, I was encouraged and pushed, like you have to do better than you're doing right now. Yes. So like it changes your mindset and makes you work better. That's what I can say. And right now I'm expecting so much. We usually get a lot of information from the experts that come along as well. And we feel at home in this place. Well, I'm so grateful. Yeah.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for sharing your experience. I would request you to take your seats as we continue. I'd like to welcome you once again. Please, let's give him a round of applause. That was, I thank you very much. Thanks once again. I'd like to welcome you once again to our conference this year, the Uganda Media Week Conference 2021. Everyone from different walks of life, different media houses, you're very much welcome. As Ruth earlier mentioned, that our theme rotates about navigating obstacles in Uganda's media journalism. That's a very huge topic to go about. For those of you who are very active on social media, which I do believe every journalist actually should be doing, if at all, I've always told people at a point when I was running Newsroom, I told them that if you are a journalist and you do not have any particular active handle, be it even on Instagram, but there are some basic ones. If you don't have like a Twitter handle, if you don't have a Facebook page, if you cannot blog, I told them you are in the wrong place. And I would say the same thing to anyone here. If at all you're not active at all, days are a little bit hard. We are taking a direction to which I do believe if you're going to attend today and tomorrow, you're going to pick up on some information on how things are going to be changing in the future. I used to tell people those days, I am not bragging, but I'll tell you this honest truth. I am one of the first people who ever owned a page on Facebook as an individual, because people used to think that pages are for celebrities. I'm one of the first people who has ever opened a Twitter account. And also, the only unfortunate bit is I was quite reluctant about those properties. And they were hacked and taken and stolen by other people. These are some of the things that you're going to be protecting highly. If you have an online outlet, protect it. Make sure that there is security to it. Many individuals have realized that this is the real gold in the future. And there are people that are sitting down just to hack and take up all these particular properties. If you're active on Twitter, look out for @Uganda Media Week 21. Please remember to share. And also Media Week 21 is a second hashtag. Media Matters UG is another hashtag as well. We are active on YouTube. You can share that particular content. Look out for Media Focus on Africa on YouTube. And Facebook, Media Focus on Africa, that is active. On Twitter, the handle is MFA Uganda. Remember to follow, like, and share all the content that is happening right there. Being a journalist is a very challenging thing. Very, very challenging. I'll tell you this. When I started media, I practically knew I was going to be a media personality. I started media as a radio presenter, and it got boring for me. I decided to go to the newsroom. When I went to the newsroom, I also realized that I had to study journalism. And I studied journalism. I went and I enrolled for journalism because I wanted to see what exactly happens when something happens. You go, what do you find that is very important about it that you take back? That when you take back, it becomes news the next day. That was like a great feeling. I wanted that to happen. So I had a friend. He's called Alex Mukulu. Probably you know him. He was a neighbor. At one time, he called me and he told me, you know what, I think I can use you somewhere. Let's go somewhere, you record for me something. It was a Guinness advert. We go to Fenon. And we go to Fenon, that's owned by Steve Jean. I think all of you know Steve Jean. Steve Jean sort of stammers. If he was here, I would say the same thing. So when I went there, we recorded, and he told me, that is very amazing. This is brilliant. We should be doing this a lot more. Just like, what do you do? I told him, I am a journalist. And said, ho, 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 ho. Ha. Now, this is like it was like all the journalists are broke. Like they will walk everywhere they go. They don't have money. I was so discouraged, and I walked, and I was like, okay, that's painful. But I still stuck on. I knew, like, this guy is lying. At the back of my mind, but up to now, I've never forgotten it. Reason I'm saying that, we all know being a journalist is very challenging. From going to the field and pick a story, to making sure that you survive every day, a turn in between, taking a bribe or running the story, running the right story, picking up the right story. I worked for Radio 1. There's a lady called Lynn Najemba. At that time, she was the editor. You know Lynn Najemba's size. She's like that. So she sent me to do a story at the Uganda Media Center. It was like one of my third stories, field stories. I went there. There was an ethics minister then, Sabab Turo. Sabab Turo talked about so many important things, very many important things. Then at the end, he made a statement at the end, and he said, but also the cause of accidents in Uganda is miniskirts. I was like, what nonsense is that? I went back to the newsroom. I reported all the other things apart from the miniskirts. And the story is run. The next day, I come back to newsroom, quickly, early morning, very excited. If you've ever been to Radio 1, there's always a flask of tea. I started pouring tea. Lynn turns, I come back, Gwe. You know how small as she is. Like, for her, she would talk to you. It's like, Gwe. Did you go to the media center? I was like, yes. You covered the story. It's like, yes. She said, Somaga Maulide. Every front page of the newspapers had accidents caused by miniskirts in Sababturo. It's the only thing I didn't report about. Everything. Red Paper, Bucket Day, Monitor, and New Vision. I was like, what am I doing wrong? I was like, how can someone actually make front page that miniskirts cause accidents? It is challenging from finances to knowledgeability to seeing angles and the like. But that is just a little bit of what I can say. I cannot put this in front of you in a better way, but invite someone who is going to take us through a particular not only presentation, but a keynote address, where we come to also get to see a different angle of what exactly happens next as we go through this particular era, beyond COVID, across the digital era, the new media that we have today. Things are changing. Where people decide to pair up for not running particular stories. The question is, what are the challenges of journalists today? But then, the real answer to this will come from Dr. Emily Maracha, here to address reflections, challenges facing journalists today. Those are the reflections that are coming through right now. A better round of applause to the same. I don't know if everyone is seeing Doctor, from here, or would you like to move closer here? Here is better. Why do I think this is better? You see, that's why I told you not to sit behind the wall. Another round of applause, please, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Emily Maracha.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. Can I please hear the energy in the room?
I am the one who answers here.
No. Thank you very much. And I think I'll be permitted to remove my mask as I am up here on my own. And thank you for sharing that story, because it kind of reminded me of how I started in journalism myself. I started working for a newspaper called the West Nile. I don't know how many, is there anyone here who has heard of the West Nile? Not even the dinosaurs. That means I'm the mother of dinosaurs. So in 2000, Limited, and a group of us had an idea that we needed a newspaper that served the West Nile region. And somebody started it up, and part of my free time, I used it to work in that newspaper. I managed the editor's desk, and the features desk, and had a column. And I think for the entire time I worked, I never got paid. And I only didn't mind it because I had a job. And I was doing this as a part-time thing. And as a result, I think it sowed the seeds of me also wanting to go and study journalism eventually. So I did study journalism much later after practicing for a while. Now, the thing about journalism is that it evolves, it changes. There are so many things that are changing. And I would like to add my voice to those who have said that Media Focus Africa has been contributing to their understanding of how this field actually is changing. By the hi, Clinton, I have seen one of my students here. and that somehow we have to keep this conversation going. There's a way Media Focus Africa, I've been involved with it from the very beginning. I've spoken at every one of them, and I want to thank Jan and her team for always engaging me. I don't take it for granted, because there are many other people who could speak about these issues perhaps even better than I could. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm happiest when I am learning and when I am teaching. So Media Focus Africa affords me both. Oftentimes, I learn from the people who have spent years in the field, doing journalism, and who have had experiences I have never had myself. And then I also bring into the room perspectives from my scholarship. I am a media scholar, and I have spent close to a decade studying the media. So that's quite something. So I like this particular space because it allows me to both learn and to also teach in some way, to share what I know. And I think that I am particularly happy that journalists are getting engaged in these conversations. That it's not other people out there having this conversation, but journalists are getting interested and they are getting engaged. And through this platform, I have met people like Good Luck Musinguzi over time, and I have learned from them as well. So I'm happy to be here today again. And what Jan asked me to do this time is to simply come and document the problems of journalism, and that's a sad thing because because these problems are many, and some of you have experienced them firsthand. But I'm just going to perhaps talk about some of the trends we have seen and some of the specific problems we have now, because the solutions will come from you. I think that you have all been engaged. Some of you have been engaged for over 20 years in journalism and so on, and you should have a better idea of how we can actually handle some of these problems. So I can now move through my my presentation. It's not going to be a typical keynote address because they're just issues I want to talk through. I think you can help me. I think can you turn it around so that I can do that myself and not disturb you? So I'll look briefly at the global trends in media and some of the opportunities that the media has in Uganda, as well as reflect on the challenges and some thoughts on dealing with those. I like to give a fairly balanced view of things, and that's why, although I have been asked to talk about the challenges, I wanted to go backwards and also first look at what are the opportunities that are there. And so in terms of opportunities, we have first and foremost the fact that the media has really grown. Those of you who were in the media in the 90s know that there was once upon a time just UTV and what? And Radio Uganda. And now most of us can't even keep up with the numbers. We can't keep up with the numbers. Almost every corner of this country has a radio station. I have had names of online outlets here that I have never had today, and congratulations to all those who are running them. So that means that the landscape has completely changed. And from the early 90s, when we are talking about one radio and one TV stations, it is now a completely different thing. That's an opportunity in itself in terms of some of the challenges we are facing. And the second thing is that there has been some level of professionalization of media. I know, I keep saying this, that every time I'm in spaces like this, people sing to me the sins of journalism. And because I teach journalism, at one time I was heading the Department of Journalism and Media Studies at Uganda Christian University. And so people heap the sins of journalism on me and tell me how journalists don't do this and don't do that. But for those of us who have been around for a long time, we know that there has been a move, at least to some degree of professionalism. And in what Ofono Pondo calls fishmongers, that at some point we had fishmongers doing journalism. and now we can talk of at least a fairly professional media. There are more people who have been educated. We've trained hundreds and hundreds of people in journalism. Why they don't end up in the newsroom is another story, but at least there are people who have been trained and who know what they are doing, and in spite of the difficult circumstances they work in, they actually do their work. And that's a very good thing in itself. Then the third thing is that globalization of the globe, if you like to say, and the relationship between globalization and the media has also presented its own opportunities. And that's why we have now so many people here saying, I ran an online station after I lost my job in a television station. I started this, I'm doing that. That's because globalization has also afforded us some of these things. And it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for interconnection in society, for people to actually relate and do better, and for people to learn from one another. There are people now learning things that you would not have imagined a few years ago without ever stepping in the classroom. I know people who have learned how to make dresses by studying on YouTube how to make dresses. And that's a huge thing. It means that we have to really, really think hard about where we are going as a society. And then the last and final thing, not really the last, the second last, is that there's also a growing need for information. And I think if anything has taught us that, it is COVID-19. That people are hungry for information. They want information, they want the right information, and they're looking for it. And that means that those who produce content have a lot of opportunities. Those who are able to manufacture content have a lot of opportunities, and the space is there. And lastly, in spite of all the challenges, the media still influences democracy in one way or another, and vice versa. The nature of democracy also influences the media, and the media also influences democracy. And if anything, kind of personified that, it was the 2021 elections, where we saw the media really playing a critical role in mobilizing voters for some people and trying to make sure that the population got the information. And why are all these opportunities there? Because of the several trends we can identify in the, I can actually call them global trends. And one of those global trends is the change in the nature of international politics itself. That somehow international politics itself changed, and we now have a more open and pluralist society. In a little long ago, when we depended on radio or depended on television, there was less democratization of space. And now we have more, don't think about the challenges of democracy, but at least the face of international politics has changed. There's more plurality, there's more openness, there's more accommodation for things that ordinarily would not have been possible. And the state is no longer the monopoly of power. We have seen that communities can gather and, around an idea. We have seen how young people use social media, young people use the media and are able to actually influence power. So power is no longer within the control of the state alone, and that has been made possible by technology. The second trend we have also seen is that there are new cultural influences that have been brought about both by globalization and the market. And I am a guardian to two young girls, an 11-year-old and a 15-year-old. And sometimes when they pick my phone, the things they do with my phone, I don't understand where they learned them. And that means that these young people are getting influenced by content I have no idea exists on my phone, by platforms, by apps on my phone that even me, I have not tried to touch. So there are cultural influences that as we think about journalism and how to tell stories, we have to be mindful of who are we telling the stories to? Who is on the other side of the spectrum? Who is our audience? What's the character of our audience now? And how are we informing them? Are we trying to inform people who are already well informed or otherwise actually more informed than we are as journalists, because we are busy trying to tell this story, but the audience is also busy finding its own story. 3, the technological revolution, which has transferred power from few to many. There's a very beautiful book called New Power, actually. And it talks about how power has shifted. The nature of power itself has shifted, has changed, where you have power from long ago. Politics worked in the sense that you had a politician who had a lot of power and talked to majority of the people. And now majority of the people have information that they need to give the politician, they need to give the policymaker. And they find ways to give that information. And that means that we can no longer do business as usual. We can no longer tell stories like we used to tell them long ago. And we have to be mindful of those changes. Who has that technology, who is using it and how? And how are those in authority actually responding to that? Because those in authority are also not just sitting there waiting for you to use that power. They're also seeking to control how you use that power. And that's how we get into the challenges we are going to look at. Then lastly, there's, in terms of the global trend, there's an appreciation for the role of information in business, politics, and social transformation, including even the affordances, despite limitations of ICTs. We have seen, I sometimes teach what we call ICTs and empowerment for journalists. And it basically, you basically are thinking about all of these information and communication technologies we have. Who do they work for? What affordances do they have? What limitations do they have? Do they work for women? Can they work for development? Can we use them to keep our environment and, maybe contribute to conservation of climate? And so on. So there are many areas where things have generally changed at the global level that are affecting how we do things in the national. So I'll then go straight to the challenges. And one, I think that as a starting point, I want to refer to what Herbert Alschulz discusses as the challenges and opportunities that the press may actually have under capitalism. And he had this to say, that the notion that the heroic press fighting the overwhelming power of the majority, sorry about that, the overwhelming power of the mighty actually, and the corrupt interests for grateful citizens is more mythical. You really do not have environments where the press is the heroic fighter for which the citizens are grateful and are actually going to emanate from the kind of democracy we have. So from many more people staying longer in power and the masses getting disoriented about the possibilities of power and governance and the return of coups and conflicts and security threats in the region, all of these are defining factors in how actually journalism functions. How journalism functions is a very important part of that area. And the second thing is that the media remains really very weak within much of Africa, and especially in Uganda. I think if we are to talk about a strong media in Uganda without necessarily disenfranchising others, I think we will be just mentioning a handful. We may be talking about hundreds of media outlets, hundreds of radio stations in almost every part of this country, but how strong are they? Can they recruit people who are educated in journalism? Can they pay for them? Can they set up a newsroom that actually collects, gathers, and interprets news for the public, and so on? So you find that the media remains very weak, and as a result, they have very limited revenue, they have poor pay, they pay poorly, and they end up with unethical practices as a result of that poor pay, poor portrayal of women in the media, lack of independence, self-censorship, you can name the problems. And that's precisely because the media remains really weak. But we also have to remember that the media is not the only institution that remains weak in much of Africa. There is almost every other institution you can think about which you cannot say is a strong institution built on foundations of structures that actually work. So without that, we cannot expect the media to be any different. The other challenge is the media remains largely characterized by the disjuncture between local and international. And I know most of you here are journalists, but when you're gathering tips for stories, when you really want to watch good news items, in most cases, you're likely to go for BBC and CNN and all of these things. And I have met very senior journalists who actually despise the local press, who think that, okay, what's there to watch in Ugandan news anyway, and so on. So the relationship between the local and international news, especially for news media, remains a very big area of problem. How do we actually get people to trust our news, people to have ideas that our news is credible, that as media houses, despite struggles with the environment that we are talking about, we are actually producing what the public needs. And that's very, very key. Then the next thing, I think I will not count because I might be counting wrongly. The other thing is the capacity of journalists to do investigative stories in the interest of the poor remains very, very weak. And in fact, even those who do it largely do it with support from Western or Western-driven. They are having projects that are supported by the West or donor-driven projects. Then they can afford to pay for a journalist to do an in-depth story because the media houses themselves cannot afford it. And so if media houses cannot afford to train good investigative journalists, cannot afford to keep them and pay for them and so on, then it means that we cannot even remotely think about our journalists having the capacity to do what traditionally we called the watchdog role, because stories that change systems are not stories that you find on the surface. They are stories that you have to dig deeper. They are stories that require resources to make. They are stories that require skill, very, very good skill to actually get. So that capacity remains a problem in our journalism and partly explains why people have little respect for our journalism. And I hope I'm not the only one who thinks that people have little respect for our journalism, but it's actually there. Then the other thing is that there's very limited citizens' access to media. And this is a paradox in some way, because we might be thinking that there are many, many media outlets. And I know this from the programs that I study. And the programs are there, but just because the programs are there, just because the outlets are there, doesn't mean that people actually have access to them or people actually utilize them. And we have to now start thinking, okay, there are 300 radio stations and so on, but who is having access to them? Do people in rural communities actually have access to proper national news, or they also get localized news from their small radio stations that are within there? And how much do these radio stations actually provide a platform for actors outside of their communities to come and utilize them? So that's a very, very serious thing. We still see that information remains concentrated in very few hands, and even public information in the hands of public officials. These public officials can easily refuse to give, in spite of having the Access to Information Act and so on. So it's not a given that access to information is now readily available and citizens actually can have access to them. And that's very, very key. We still experience a lot of technological divide and harnessing the power of technology. I have, for the most part, heard people say that the media is now online, and maybe the people who do online media here can tell us, how many of the Ugandan population actually access these media sites. And it might be premature for us to think that our audience is now online. I think every single research has shown that our audience remains on radio. And including the most recent one by the Aga Khan University and the DW Academy, because I happen to have reviewed that study. So every single study still shows that. And yet, in terms of policy, in terms of regulation, we see that our concentration is largely going online. We see that a lot more people are now thinking that online is the space where news has to be put and so on. And inherently, we are cultivating exclusion. And that means that a large part of our population is not going to have access to information because they actually do not have access to the platforms as a result of this technological divide. And as a result, we are not part of those countries that we can say are harnessing the power of technological revolution. And I think I have been engaged in another study where we are looking at science granting councils, but we discovered that in almost all of Africa, it's South Africa that has access to online media of up to at least 41%. Uganda is even under 10%. So if we are talking those figures, then we have to think about issues of platform. Where can journalists put their information, and what kind of information are they likely to put there? Fragile democratic reforms that leaves a weak institutional basis for protection of journalists, and this is very, very critical in as far as seeking redress where journalists have been violated, their rights have been violated. We have seen so many times cases of violation of journalists' rights, especially during election times. And I think that relates to the next issue of, civil and political freedoms that often come under very significant threats. So if we have a media environment that is complex and maybe in some ways provide opportunities for those with power to actually threaten those who provide news or produce content, then it is hard to say that we are dealing with that problem. Then that in a way also relates to the state acting with undue force to punish their critics. And when I talk about the critics of the state, I don't just mean journalists, actually. I have had journalists tell me that it's very difficult to cover an opposition politician. And that means that the transfer of punishment of critics is from punishing the politician who is opposing the government in place to punishing the journalist who covers that politician. And that means that the state-society relation have to do with news. I'm not just talking about the regular citizen journalist who puts ideas on the net. I am restricting myself to those whose job it is to gather news and present it. And if the citizen journalist is doing exactly that, then they qualify for this, my definition. So that's very, very key. And the other thing that complicates all of this is the relationship between the media and the state and society, which has remained complicated in Uganda. For all intents and purposes. We might say that the media is now vibrant, there are more people doing journalism, there are more media outlets, there are more, all of those indicators actually can show that we have more media, but we can't forget the fact that that media remains very weak and the journalists can be easily threatened into silence, and the markers of freedom of the press remain very, very weak. So we largely are talking about a complex environment for media with very restrictive laws. And by the way, when we talk about the laws, there are, I sometimes stop counting, but there are many, many laws. If you even add the popular arts and, popular culture and media, if you look beyond just the Press and Journalists Act and the UCC Act, there are many, many other things out there that, from a legal point of view, are restrictive for the media. And the only good luck we have is that the state often implements them when they need to. They rarely implement these laws as they should. And often just, if you're lucky enough not to step on the toes of those with power, you are likely to get away with many other sins of journalism which are prescribed for in the law. And so that kind of environment is itself a problem. The threats it presents against journalists is a problem. And the online space can itself be a problem. There are many people now getting threatened online because of their work online. So women are particularly a problem there. Women face more issues online than I think men do. Then lastly, as a way of bringing home the challenges, there might be also some training deficiencies that, yes, we train journalists, but how well do we train them? How well do we ensure that they actually can change the face of journalism, professionalize the media as a matter of course, and even those we have trained rarely end up in the newsroom anyway. So by bringing these challenges together, my hope is that it will provoke you into discussing some of the specifics, because I have talked more broadly, even though the examples are very much within us. So I'll just offer a few thoughts. I know that you might be in a better position to discuss some of the ways to deal with this, but I do hope that we will continue to have conversations that actually allow us to appreciate the nature of freedom and the watchdog role of the media. through media and information literacy, I still find that, at least from my observation and interaction with the journalists and with people in public life, that there's very little appreciation for the role of journalism and the role of journalists. And so today when I was coming, I saw a headline by the Daily Monitor headline, and who remembers what it said? It said something about Uganda surrendering its key assets to China because of loans and stuff like that. And it got me wondering, how often do we as Ugandans actually see headlines like that and then rush to read rush to get the newspaper, read the story in detail, and cause some deep conversation around the issue that journalists are raising? Most likely, most often people will see such headlines, a few people grumble online for a few days, and it's gone. And that's the death of it. And then what? So I think that we need to have these conversations ongoing and ensure that people actually understand the role of journalism. And what do you do with information like that when you get it? How do you get that information to mean something for the citizen? Does it stop on the cover page of the Daily Monitor, and tomorrow we read another story on the cover page and move on? So what's the point of our journalism? Why are we toiling for no pay? So that what happens? So that's one. But the other thing is that we also should be thinking about how do we reorganize space and power? Like, how do we ensure that people actually know where to find? They may not have access to a Twitter account, but where can they find information that is relevant for them? And how can they use their power more efficiently? Beyond the traditional public sphere, beyond what we know as what has become the new public sphere, if you like, social media. So how exactly do we ensure that people in the villages, and this is something Charity used to talk about, Charity Ahimbisi, for those who know her, of Sedu. Charity used to say that most people say the votes for the NRM are stolen, but what they don't understand is that the voter is in the village and has no clue about the many things that we fight about, and is happy because they are peaceful. And so how do we get that citizen who is peaceful to actually not be so peaceful about the things that are not going right, that you're reporting about in your daily newspaper of every day? How do you get the radio to pick up a story like that? Imagine if every radio station in this country picked up the Daily Monitor headline and discussed it in detail and caused the conversation around it. What would actually happen to the civic consciousness of our society? What are we doing about the civic consciousness of our society? We can't just keep complaining among the elite, talking to ourselves and thinking that, we are causing something to happen when we are actually not. The third thing we need to be thinking about as we really discuss ways to navigate these obstacles is our ownership models. Who owns the media? And I did say earlier that the state is no longer the monopoly, but so is the state no longer the only obstacle to good journalism. There are many obstacles to good journalism, and owners of media who are not within the state, who are not in government per se, can also be obstacles because of their other interests. And that's very, very key. It's a discussion we have often had on the surface, especially when we have elections and when politicians of the opposing side have been denied access to radio stations and so on. But then it ends there. But I think we need to have a more focused conversation around ownership. Do we need 300 radio stations? What if we had 10 good radio stations, or at least 2 in every region, that was providing quality journalism, informing people, and actually causing them to think about the things we are interested in? So maybe we need to think about those things and see the weak media houses? What do we do with them? Should everybody who feels the gatekeeping roles have kept them out start their own outlet and do something else? How can these who have outlets actually, you know, work together? I have sometimes asked people who run these outlets that, okay, how many people, maybe we can ask these people, how many people do you work with? And you will be surprised, some of them work with one other person, 2 other people. And how effective is that in terms of, you know, creating content that is meaningful, that is impactful? Very, very key. Then the other thing you might wish to discuss is how do we harness the power of alternative media? You know, this is a conversation we've particularly had for the women within the knowledge of you know, mainstream media excluding women, and we've always asked ourselves, how can women have their own spaces? But it shouldn't even be just women, but communities can have actually alternative communicative spaces that allows them to still get information, credible, important information that then the community gets access to, so they don't need to individually own media platforms. And the beauty of small media is that it helps people to create meaning, to connect, to be, to have a sense of community, to feel that this is about us and we need to do something about this because it is about us. So small media, community media is something that we need to creatively think about. They also play a very key role in mediating state-society relations. And I have, I had the benefit of living for a couple of years in Durban, South Africa, and we had small community newspapers that often were brought for free, literally, because they are adverts. And you learned about your community. You knew what was happening in your community. You didn't have to pay for it, but at least you got informed. You could take some action about something. And here, what we have done is to even strangle the little community media that is there with taxation, because we need money as government, and we must tax these people. So thinking about harnessing the power of alternative small media is very, very key. And lastly, having some sense of legal reform. And this is the one thing I say all the time, because the media landscape has so changed as a result of technology that the laws we made in 1995 can no longer really meet its requirements. The things that now need to happen for the media to be able to harness the power of convergence, the power of technological, the revolution we are talking about, is really to have progressive legislation that allows for people to harness the power of these technologies. And I think most scholars have recognized that how much technology is going to work for us is a direct function of what kind of regulation we actually have, what kind of policies and laws we actually have. If those laws are frustrating, then we can't harness the power of these things. If they are enabling, then we are likely to actually harness the power of these technologies. So technologies by themselves will have a kind of double sword effect, in the sense that it will have affordances and it will also have limitations. It will have people who use them well, it will have people who do not use them well. So should you make sure that people who can use them well can't use them well because there are some people who might use them badly? So I think that is what we need to think about as a country. Finally, in conclusion, I do hope that we have a meaningful conversation and solutions, and those should keep in mind really the media and democracy relations. Much of my research over the last, since 2000 when my first research was actually on elections, I have done a lot of my work which really is within the democracy and development media space. And I think that we need to understand that relationship if we are talking about solutions? What kind of environment are we working in, and what does it afford us and what does it not afford us? And then secondly, the whole point of globalization and media and the kind of technological, political, cultural, and economic changes that have come with that globalization and the media itself. So we should at least keep doing what is within our areas to make a contribution. And I think that every action counts. We don't need to be big actors. We can act on small things, advocate for small things, and advocate for, these networks we create. Can we use them to actually solve some of the problems of journalism, which are very many as you saw them? And I think I want to stop here and invite conversation around this. Thank you.
A better round of applause on that note. A better one. Thank you very much. Doctor, before you actually move away, I'll allow for about 3-4 interactions before we break for our breakfast. You let me know if you have any question, but I'll actually go first. I will ask you, among the challenges that you talked about, I'll first tell you a story. There was a young man who had graduated, and there was a professor who came and told him that, when you're finalizing, you had to produce a paper. As a journalist, normally there has to be an article, on your hands. So the professor asked this young man, so what happens for you to graduate? How do you come up with these brilliant ideas? Then the young man said, let me see. It's like I do it on my computer. Then the professor is like, okay, I'm listening. He's like, so I press Control C, which is Control C. The professor said, brilliant, okay. And then what happens? Then the young man said, then I press Control V. Then in 5 minutes I graduate. But you did not talk about the challenge of the quality of the young people that get educated and they become journalists. I think personally would love to hear 2 lines about the same. Let's have all the questions for once and for all so that she can address them in a nutshell. Anyone? Okay.
Mine is actually not a question. I wanted to point out something when she spoke about the Daily Monitor story and the reach that it could get, or any other story in media. And I feel like we haven't embraced collaborations. You go to tell a story, it is just you. You're going to, going to put it on my online page, and that's it. Only my readers will probably see it, and it won't reach far. But if I tell my story and I feel like it's actually touching every Ugandan, normally I'll send a message, an email to the editor at the Investigator. I'll send to the Observer. I'll send maybe to Daily Monitor and say, I have this story that I feel should reach every Ugandan and everyone should see it. Do you think that you can have this in your print, or you can also put it online so that more people can be reached? And sometimes also when I'm working on my stories, I will carry like a photojournalist, or I'll carry someone from radio, such that as I tell my story online, they also have their ways of telling their story. So if it runs online and runs on radio, also a photojournalist has something to show, or even a TV station. So I feel like we need to embrace collaborations if the stories are going to reach as many people as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Briefly.
I also had, I wanted to talk about what my sister talked about in regarding to the Daily Monitor story Emily talked about. I want to add my voice that collaboration or networking between different media houses is one key factor or a big problem that media houses in Uganda still go through. In Lira, where basically we are, we have this problem where a media house wants to be on its own. People don't want to share ideas. People don't want to work together. And if all the media houses, let's say radio station, newspapers, online, you take up the Daily Monitor story of today, then of course we would make a better Uganda, because I don't think there's any problem with actually doing something like that. Then secondly, for us who actually on media, online media, I think one big problem that Emily need to guide us, let me use that word, to guide us on, is in Uganda, we have many online newspapers. And this is actually making government to regulate. Now, last year there was actually a directive from the UCC that all online newspapers should be regulated. And they have target price of actually $24 for a particular media house, online newspaper, to be licensed to operate. Now, this is actually one of the problems that I think is stopping online newspapers from, like I would say, doing the quality journalism. Let me say that in my own opinion. Now, how do we ensure online newspapers in Uganda are doing the credible thing, let alone the regulation by the UCC? And of course now another thing is, when it comes to Uganda, we are yet to embrace digital media. We're using social media for different things. Then now, maybe you could tell us what actually is supposed to be done. Right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Thank you for the presentation, and I've quite picked a few things. One, you talked about advocacy. And as I sit right now in this room, and we, let's say, identify the percentage of, let's say, women and men that are present, I don't think it's a fair distribution. How are we encouraging women to actually join these spaces? Because we realize that women are actually, you know, stereotyped, like they have prejudices that come with them as they carry on this like the work of journalism. So how are we encouraging women to continue with these spaces? Then secondly, you talked about technology. When we talk about technology, have we also talked about the aspects of the after effect, the negative criticism that these journalists face? How are they dealing with them? And yeah, majorly that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On the point where she mentions women, an outlet, that's NBS TV, actually came out to say that it is the women that don't want to participate, that they don't have the willingness to come forth, that even when they invite them, they don't want to come. I want you to put that together with the same point that she made. Where were we? Who was coming through? Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Doctor. I'd like to add more to the challenges. There are some that you've highlighted, but I'll give a few basing on my own experience. I work in rural Uganda, and I think these are some of the things that I've encountered. There are some graduates, or I should say, we have a challenge of people who come straight from university or college, and they go into management straight away. They do not have the experience, and they do not know what it takes to manage some of the stories that come from the field. All they care about is having a story on the desk, and then it is aired or published. Sometimes you find that the story goes out when it's lacking, or maybe it is one-sided, or some of the things. Then there is the failure to localize stories. Some do copy and paste. They'll pick a story from the BBC website or thereabouts, and then they'll just put it into their bulletin instead of giving the information that they've got to kind of feed it into the community that they are serving. So you find it lacking, and it's not conceptualized in a way. And then lastly, I think there is an issue of technical know-how. I've had stories of colleagues who apply for jobs. Regardless of the experience and the abilities that they have, they are kicked aside, but the jobs and maybe opportunities are given to those ones who have an attachment to some of the bosses or things of the kind. At the end of it all, the product, the final product that the consumer gets is half-baked. You see a lot of mistakes online where someone cannot differentiate between two words, there and there. And then you kind of find the stories entangled. And I think this is all because of either lack of proofreading or things of the kind.
Thank you very much. You know, every time I move a microphone to the next person, I normally say briefly, but I don't know what's happening.
I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. Thank you so much, Dr. Emily, for your presentation. The BBC's media model is widely acknowledged because of its structure. It has been tested for so many years in terms of objectivity and how content is presented. From years of Tony Blair, his involvement in Iraq, to the recent scandal where Prince Andrew is being investigated. And this is because everyone in the UK pays for what ultimately goes online and what funds the organization. Challenges, like you've mentioned, of our media houses here in Africa and in Uganda specifically, include interference by the state and advertisers, but also, like you've mentioned, media owners also influence what goes in our media house, on our media platforms. And this ultimately makes journalists censor themselves in terms of what they cover and what they put out there. According to your study of media over the years, do you think that this is the BBC's media model, do you think this is something that we can adopt in Africa or in Uganda, so that we have content that is for the people and aims to develop us, but not influenced by who owns the media house? Thank you.
When I started, there were like 2 hands. Now I'm disturbed. Let me tell you something. Breakfast is ready. So there are some people here that are getting unhappy with you. Okay, let's count who is coming through. But briefly, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 minute. Less than a minute.
I wanted to ask, you talked about online. I wanted to ask, is there any study that has shown if people are using online and then radio stations pick those stories, the effect of extending those stories to the communities, so that we don't only say that less than 10% of the people use online, because I have evidence where I know most of the radios who use my stories. So there's that multiplier effect. Then lastly, I wanted to ask, in terms of the money, the resources to use, is it possible for Media Focus, maybe Jan would look at this one, to look at coming up with grants that can help on some of these things, so that the next time we come, maybe we know we facilitated like 10 stories, either investigative or developmental. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Doctor, and my colleagues. My name is Patrick Uma. I'm based in Gulu. I think the challenges that we are facing are quite vast, and I think one of them that affects generally most of us, but the female colleagues, is sexual harassment in workplaces. I don't know if you brought that out, but that is a very serious problem now that is coming out in most media outlets, in radio stations and newspapers. You know, there's even a documentary that was made out of it. Our colleagues from Kenya did that, and I think we need to take that very seriously. Also, I think the issue of course, generally payment to workers, to journalists is still very low, and I think we really need to discuss that because it affects definitely directly our livelihood. So finances and sexual harassment is very a big topic that we need to work around and see that we forge a way forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you came a little bit late. One of the issues you must have tackled initially was about payment. And also one of my colleagues, I think from this table, addressed the same. But also the issue about sexual harassment and also versus being employed is a very big issue when it comes to female colleagues. I don't know, I hear, but yeah. 1 second and we're about to go. You're doing like half a minute, right? We have our colleagues online. We'll give you an opportunity as well. I think we do have a few hands that are coming through. Feel free. If you're online and you'd like to participate and ask a question, just get through. We'll be giving you a minute there.
Thank you so much. Dr. Emily, briefly, I want to bring to your attention, Doctor, that as we're speaking right now, journalists are running away from the newsroom. If they decide to be there, they will have to make sure that the content they're going to be producing, either it is biased content or it is not objective. You know, in journalism, one of the values or the ethics we are taught is to write accurate information, timely, you know. All that is caused by the pressure they are getting from the state. So what are they resorting to is self-censorship or self-regulation, as you call it. So as scholars and educators in the media, how are you working hard or maybe developing models to tell the state that, you know what, guys, journalism is important, the media is very important. A democracy or states or governments have to work with the media, and media has to work to make sure that the nation grow. You get? So how are you doing that? Are you developing models behind that we don't know? Are you telling them and they're not listening to you so that also we pick it up from there? What are you doing? Thank you, Dr. Emily.
We were almost done, right? Oh. Who? No. It's the other men that I was harassing. With women, it's a different story.
Thank you very much. I think my name is Juliet Grace Luede. I work with the Media Challenge Initiative. My question is on the policies that, Doctor, you alluded to. Are we as journalists, have we educated ourselves about the different policies that exist? Have we even taken the step to see that these policies are actually redesigned? Because, yeah, the things that exist, even the media laws that are there, they are so out of touch and old. What are we doing about this as journalists? And what can we do from your perspective?
You're done? Can give you another a few seconds. But with the men, he had put up his hand before you. Half a minute, eh?
Thank you very much, Doctor. You talked about harnessing small media as a way of safeguarding the future for the media. But to realize that currently there is a lot of corporate venturing whereby the larger media companies are eating into or buying out the small media. So what does this mean for the quality of journalism in the future? Because we are bound to see media platforms being run by very few conglomerates, which they will definitely control. I could give a few examples, but for purposes of this discussion, maybe I may not be able to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Once again, Senoga Patrick from Mama FM. My observation was on the part, that side when you talked about the state. You said state, most of the time they don't consider the acts, and you talked about the UCC Act and the Press Act. I managed to get some of one of the interactions with one of the officers, and they said they are doing it deliberately because they are seeing that we don't have power. We have already been manipulated by the state. Some of the media houses are state-owned. Some of the media houses are owned by big characters in the government. So this one is it is a deliberate move, most especially when it comes to threats to the lives of the journalists. Another issue that I didn't hear coming out is the threats of burning out the licenses of the media houses. And some of the media houses, like radios, they are getting to the extent of sharing the frequency, and even some of them are threatened to be cut off. I don't know how we are going to go about this issue because it is touching. Thank you very much.
I love the way you put it at the end, it is touching. But brilliant expressions, and that means that most of us were actually paying attention to what has been happening. I don't know how you're going to be able to go about it. It's more like actually having another presentation, but I believe you have experience in the same, and I'll leave it to you. Should we go for the online questions as well right away, so that we can have this once and for all? Just 1 second, as you were saying that the chat has moved. I think with the question about laws, I do remember Dr. Emily mentioned and said that there is very, very many laws to an extent that if at all government was to, put them in place, most of the media houses would not be operational. And she mentioned that they only bring them out if at all there is need for them to, if at all they are catching up with something. But looking through here, thank you very much, Dr. Emily. I like your views about promoting community media. This comes from the Makama Aloysius, and this to everyone. Well, we will work on some pictures that weren't moving well. I do believe this was fixed already. Dorothy Nanyonga, to everyone, I think we also need to find innovative ways of building and reading culture, and I think this should come with innovative ways of packaging the news so as to easily understand by all, to be understood by all persons, I believe, irrespective of whether they can read or not, for instance, through the use of cartoons and graphics. And then Simon Wakorach, thanks, Doctor, for your presentation, but we always miss out on collaborative journalism. Also, we need to appreciate the media theories to inform our decisions and to understand the challenges that we have at hand and how to keep pushing amidst these regulation, laws, and policies. Felix Warom, journalism needs to continue working hard to persevere, I beg your pardon, despite the challenges. And Munira Suwed, okay, she's just considering attending online. And also, Felix Warom says that the liberalization of media has also become a detriment to the media. Yes, the space is open, but there are also a lot of unprofessional actions by people who abuse the media space, ranging from media owners and the state that come with repressive laws that abuse the rights of journalists at will. With those comments, there's lots of other comments. We can't have all of them at once, but let's have some more space with you. Once again, kindly do welcome Dr. Emily Maracha to respond to some of the questions that have come through a presentation where it was clearly what next, reflections, challenges facing journalism today. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. And I want to thank people online. Some of them are complaining that we always consider them. I think I'm particularly glad you're there, and thank you for your contributions. I'll just follow the trend so that I don't miss out on much, but I thank you for the comments in particular because I don't have to answer to those. I'll answer the questions. Where I can't answer, we shall Google later. Yeah, the first one is your issue on the quality of young people coming out of the university, and and I think that connects to somebody saying that they are inexperienced and then they are put in management and so on. I did talk about actually deficiency in training, that somehow this is something that is not just a journalism problem. It's a much wider problem in higher education. I am particularly interested in higher education, and the quality has been going down for many reasons, and we can't say that journalists have been spared. We do try to give them our best, but also the things that our young people now focus on are not the things that we used to focus on. For example, we are dinosaurs and they're younger. But the real issue here is that these young people also see things differently. They see things differently, but there are also many hardworking, good young people that we have to acknowledge who have come through the same system. So there will always be those who fall between the cracks, who don't measure up, who don't do this and that, the things we complain about. But the question for me often is who is responsible for training effectively journalists? We all are. The training institutions do their part, and when these people come into the newsroom, also these have to play their part in trying to make sure that they actually become quality journalists. And we as training institutions have done our best to ensure that our students also get placement in these training institutions, I mean in media institutions, to do internship and learn from both areas. We've done what we can, but as parents, sometimes you do everything and you still don't get all of it. But it's a concern that many of us share in as far as the quality of young people we are training is concerned. And it goes back to the entire education system. The people coming, when people say, university graduates can't construct a sentence and so on, and I ask myself, who is to blame for that? Where is it coming from? How is it that these people also reach the university without constructing a sentence? And we have to think about that. Two, I think I want to appreciate the issue of collaboration. Those of you who were here last year, this was one of the things I really talked about. That in some cases, especially where, on those topics that are difficult and that are likely to create threats for a journalist, it might be easier to collaborate and produce a report that you don't necessarily own as a person, and you own as a group, and you're able to actually create some impact. That's very key. Regulation of online outlets. I think we may not expect that if we are in the business of news, we may not expect that just because we are online does not mean that we shouldn't be regulated. How do we also pursue the standards of journalism while online? Let's not think that the platform separates us from what the ideals of journalism should be. If we are doing journalism online, we should also still have the basics of journalism while offline and online. And that means that regulation should be both offline and online, because if you allow regulation to only affect print, for example, then those who need to abuse the media will go online and so on. So you need basic, I am one of those people who believe that regulation is key, but the question is what form of regulation and how do we regulate? Can we regulate in a way that enables people to actually do good journalism rather than, frustrate them? So regulation should not be the problem here, but how and what form of regulation should be the issue we focus on. And we can engage in having that conversation. I think somebody was asking, what are we doing to ensure that these laws are actually reformed? And that's part of the thing, that we need to engage in making sure that the laws are working for us. Then technology after effects. How are we dealing with that? This is a very difficult one, and I don't think I have answers per se in as far as the technology after effects are concerned. Regulation sometimes hopes that they will protect, they will minimize harm. And as I say, technology is one of those things that you can use for good or for bad. And how that is allowed to thrive is dependent on the nature of also regulation and how much empowered people actually are to use these kinds of technologies. So it's something that we have to continue discussing. And then I've already talked about the inexperienced journalists and lack of professionalism, the quality of journalism, and so on. And it's what concerns all of us. And it's one thing that I think in the last address that I gave, I talked about taking journalism seriously. And if we are not taking journalism seriously, who should take it? So we have to, first of all, as owners, as managers, as editors, as journalists, we have to take the profession seriously and try to deal with those challenges that come from us. Then we see how do we together deal with those challenges that come from the outside, from the state, from whoever, wherever. So that's very, very key. Now, Clinton, about the BBC model, can we also adopt it? Actually, the BBC is a public service media, and we do have our own public service media here. And the question we should be asking is, why isn't ours working like the BBC does? Or why are we not giving it our all? Why is it not working for Ugandans the way that other public service media works? But in much of Africa, public service media, apart from South Africa, has not really worked that well. And I think we do have ideas of why they have not worked that well, because they have tended to be captured by the state or captured by those with money and relations to the state. So we already have that model. We fund the UBC with our public money the same way that public money funds the BBC. The question is, why has ours actually failed? The UBC Act actually creates an enabling environment for UBC to behave exactly like that and meet the objectives of a public service media that ensures the public will have it as a preferred source of news. Now, if the public, I don't know how many people here watch UBC, with all due respect. So, yes, so the point is, how do we then ensure that UBC becomes our preferred media so that they can meet the diversity concerns that they have been created to meet? So that's my brief for that. The effect of 10% use on, the effect of how many, whether news items online translates to the community that doesn't have access to media. But then this is the argument people used to have of print, that after all, only 3% of Ugandans and the elite actually read print, and so it doesn't really reach many people. And the argument, the academic argument, is that newspapers get passed around. Now we are even saying that nobody is buying newspapers anyway. So obviously there will be some articles online that get passed through the radio and passed through the community. And I think that's what I was talking about, that what if a Daily Monitor newspaper article was, transmitted through radio stations, through whatever, and still those who can't read it will get the gist of what was there or what the story is about. And most radio stations do newspaper summaries in the morning. They will also tell you what the big stories are online and so on and so forth. But the whole point of mentioning the 10% is that we do not become blind to the exclusions that are there, to the fact that there are many more people who will not have access to that kind of news, and we can't wish it away. Sexual harassment, I don't think I have the solutions, because there have been many laws to protect. There are many laws, I can just say. And what we can do is to have people in the newsroom who actually are actively looking out for these things and can deal with them. I've been talking to Carol Beyanga of Daily Monitor often, and I'm always, when I'm sending students for internship, I'm always saying, Carol, please protect my girls. And the idea is that, some of these also do not really yet know what they need to do while they are there. They are also growing. They're young people, and you need to mentor them. You need to guide them. You need to help them appreciate their worth for who they are, for what they can do. And that ties in with the whole point of women refusing to go for talk show programs. And I think I've written so many articles about these on in my column. Almost every month I write something about that in particular. And I keep saying that women don't just refuse. Women have suffered years of stereotyping, of being made to feel like they can't be public speakers, they are not good.
So the media house that said that lied. The media had, it was put out, it was actually public information. In particular, it came from NBS, and it was written by their publicist.
And I responded to NBS.
You did?
Actually, yes.
It was clear, I said that women just don't want. They call them, they say no.
That's what I was coming to.
We want to go home to cook.
That's what I'm coming to, that some women will say that they want to go home and cook. They want to take their children to school. They want to do this and that. The problem is that most media houses also look at a very small, narrow circle of women who are also busy and who may not find time to be on the radio or television all the time. So it's the way these programs have been structured that have also made it difficult for most of these women to actually participate.
I love the fact that this has come through. I was exchanging this with a colleague who is in this room, actually, and it's about the same subject. And I told her that I think when you say that women are not fully participating, especially in media outlets, I made a statement of which actually I believe you'll agree to, that 70% of media houses and their editorials are headed by women. 70%.
Yeah, I would like to have access to that research.
No, like really serious. Most of the editors in most media houses are headed by women. Yeah. You go back and check.
Somebody's reminding me, including my friend Carol Beyanga.
That argument still remains, but please proceed. I don't want to derail you.
I want us to appreciate the facts, the reasons why women say no to those programs. I am not denying that women don't know, because I've done research, remember? I've done research on this subject, and it was the subject of my doctoral research. And so I have a number of reasons why women do not participate in these programs. And one of them is the structure of the program, the timing of the program, the issues discussed in these programs, who hosts them, and their outlook. There are a number of reasons, determinants as to why women don't.
So there are reasons as to why women turn down these particular offers or invites.
I want to believe that there are also men who turn down invites for different reasons.
But few. We do.
Let's say that when we are discussing diversity and participation on public affairs programs, by the way, don't say all programs, because we do know entertainment programs are overwhelmingly dominated by women. Most of them are actually having a female in them. So when we are talking about women not participating, and we are not talking about women journalists or who are in the newsroom or whatever, we are talking about programs that invite public people to speak or that invite interactions from the public. And it is those programs where women don't call in, where women say no to come through, where women may not be visible.
Yeah,
and those are different problems from the larger problem we are
You made a
about.
statement that actually makes me that women prefer particular programs, and you mentioned entertainment. Lately, I do believe that the best
I have not said they prefer.
No, you actually mentioned that most
prefer.
entertainment programs are presented by women, which brings back the old stereotype that women love rumor mongering. And most of these entertainment shows have a lot of gossip. I'll allow Jan to say something. I don't know why she's fighting too.
Yeah, I'm actually getting concerned. But the media house that decided to present that fact, I would like to think that they have an opportunity to go back and reflect on how they presented it. There's no crisis of women who want to comment, right? And sometimes they don't have to be doctors. They don't have to be maybe leaders in their field. No. The problems that women face are sometimes just across the street, you know? And we have an obligation to, I think we spoke about it in the previous media week, media literacy should be continuous. We have obligations to train people how to talk to the media. Just call them, go to Kamuja. NBS are they still there? Yeah, go down and get people. Offer time to train them. You will not struggle. So there's an opportunity for them to reflect. Another thing is, these researchers here, we need to investigate their methodologies, you know, and their motivations. And finally, when we get these women, these large women you see in the newsrooms editing, right? What is the two-way communication that's happening between the authority and them? When we ask for breastfeeding places, do we get them? When we ask for a balanced pay rise, a balanced paycheck between the men and the women, do we get them? You know, when we demand for particular answers, do we get them? Or is it still, let's look at it, let's forward this to the next meeting. And so this is very important for me because we can demonstrate, and by the end of this conference, we shall demonstrate that there is no excuse whatsoever.
A round of applause to that. But then now look at all these hands. Let's. You want to support the girls?
Thank you. I really want to say something on that. Having been in these newsrooms for a very long time, I think the issue of the diversity of the representation, either in terms of gender, some of these programs, is not an issue of the sources to defend. I know that the structure of the Ugandan newsrooms is that across board, I don't want to limit it to a single media house, people don't really work very hard to try to get to this diversity. I don't think that there are no women, enough women commentators for any of the program. Let it be political, let it be sports. It is a matter of those people then who are charged with managing these processes, these newsrooms, these programs, that need to work very hard to get this. I can speak from experience. Around 2005, the Monitor Nation Media Group Board asked us to put in place a panel of experts to be commenting on major issues. I was the special projects editor, and we did an advert for people to apply, and I can assure you, 50 to 50, the applications were from both genders. So I think it is the matter of these people who handle these aspects in the newsrooms to work very hard on ensuring that there is a diversity of representation on these issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I am not going to take more on that, but I'll make a statement here. I have been a programmer, I've been a presenter, I've been on air on several occasions. When there is a matter. I'll use an example of the Capital Gang. And you say, open the lines and let's hear from the people who are listening. There will be one lady that will call, and the rest, 30 of them will be men. That's what I don't know. They don't want to.
Thank you. First of all, thank you very much, Alex.
Calls come through and you don't look at the call and say, hey, female. No, you just pick who is there.
And you see,
thank you,
thank you very much, Alex.
Give it to you.
Thank you very much, Alex, for that particular point, and Jan as well. And I think it's something that we have to keep talking about, because most times we have producers and presenters and editors with inherent biases, and who strongly believe that there are no women who can participate in these programs. And how are these particular people supposed to look for women? Because they already have inherent biases, that there are no women with interesting viewpoints. And I think that we need to look more beyond just they don't want. Because that's the most lame excuse to say women don't want. It is for us to have understanding of what are these programs actually doing, who are they made for, who listens to them, who watches them. They are more likely to be women interested in some types of programs. I have studied business programs. You will find many women who find interest in those programs. Majority of the public affairs programs we are talking about are largely political programs, and it is because editors and producers believe that women cannot discuss politics. Mostly it is about the media. It is not about the women. And we have to appreciate that it comes from the media, from the actors in the media, more than it comes from the women. And I think that I have talked myself out on this problem, and I've written an entire 300-page book on it. So I know exactly what the issues are, and I could continue on that. So I don't want to keep it at that. Alex has put it so well, and I think that we can take it from there. How do we protect small media from conglomerates? That's a tough one, and I think that, again, it goes back to the ownership discussion I was talking about, because, again, there are deeper issues that unless we address them from the point of view of media ownership and from the point of view of policy, we are unlikely to address them, especially where conglomeration is a key thing. Threats of banning out, getting licenses out and so on. We've largely talked about restrictive media environment, that's a given. Online people, innovative ways of ensuring we have reading culture. And I think when I was talking about media and information literacy, that includes also a reading culture. Media theories informing some of these things. I think the challenge we've had as journalism is that most of the media theories have also been Western-based, and at UCU we've been trying to introduce what we call the African perspectives of media, and we get to talk about these things from, the African context, where we would want to talk about these things from how our media operates and why we may not necessarily compare our UBC with BBC. There are a number of theories that actually can explain this. So journalists should work hard to preserve journalism. I think I couldn't agree more. And how do we deal with abusing those who abuse the media space from the media's side? Media is not necessarily a democratic institution, and sometimes they will abuse their power. So that is why regulation is needed, and that is why our discussion should be more about how do we regulate responsibly? How do we, what form of regulation do we adopt, and how do we ensure that we regulate responsibly? Otherwise, I want to thank all of you for actively engaging with this subject, for the many, many questions. It was very threatening listening to all the questions, but I think that we've addressed all of them. Invite me.
Yes. That is going to be very interesting. I need advice. I think we are going to be having a working breakfast where you pick your breakfast and also just make a bounce back. Our MV video should be ready. Eva should be ready. Are we going to have video or Eva? The MV video should be ready. And Eva, we are getting back to you shortly as the MV video should be running right now. To our friends who are running online, we are very considerate. We can't mention all the names. But in 1 second, should we run the video? Okay, let's run the video and we'll be getting back to you immediately, Eva, and you should be as well listening to what is in the video. Please feel free to come and pick your breakfast and return to your table. Let's have the video. Is the video ready? Once again, the hashtag across is, just look out for, in the first place, just look out for Uganda Media Week 21. That's on Twitter. Media Week 21. Then Media Matters UG. On YouTube, we are streaming live. Please remember to pick that and share it wherever you can. On Facebook, Media Focus on Africa is active. And Twitter at MFAUG. Please go on Twitter and share our content largely. It's being received greatly. Is our video ready? It's coming. All right, thanks everyone for participating. In case you're catching us in bits, our colleagues who are running online, thank you also once again. It's the Media Week 2021. It's the 3rd edition. We are running under a theme, Navigating Obstacles in Uganda's Journalism. We've just had our presentation from Dr. Emily Maracha, who was, just going about the question, reflections, challenges facing journalism today. And also, there's a question that was asked earlier by a colleague concerning digital and how it's going to be put across and together with, how media is transitioning. I do believe that is going to be addressed shortly as well. And in the meantime as well, just to recognize our friends, Eva Georgia, we are just waiting for you shortly. We are going to be running our video and then we get back to you. Nigel Mogamu, thanks very much for staying on. And Dorothy Aine, Stella Ipas, we realize you're there, as was here to Saturday as well. Thanks for being there. Media Focus Online. Look out for our content on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram as well. Felix Warom, thanks, and Monira Suwed. We've seen all your comments. Watum Francis, Simon Wakoroch, Simon as well. We saw your comment. Jen Angom as well, thanks very much for coming through greatly. Other comments and also participation from Apollo Kakaire, from Dorothy Nanyonga, among others. It's our great pleasure that you're watching and listening from wherever you are. Our video is ready. Please listen and watch this particular content. It is part of everything.
Let's imagine a world where citizens could get unrestricted access to information, where everyone could express their own, Let's imagine a world where all the citizens could get unrestricted access to reliable information, where everyone could share heard. This environment has also increased cooperation hands and political or economic pressure is eroding the independence of media outlets. They sought the facts, offering platform for
Well, a very good morning. It's still good morning. About 12 minutes, yeah, to midday. Later, we'll be having a panel of discussants who will be elaborating on various issues. But right now, earlier on, I mentioned that Eva Georgia will be joining us to, also grow about a very important subject. And this is about digital business, models for building resilience and quality journalism. Eva is coming through on Zoom, and I do believe she can be able to hear me or also see me right now. It's good morning here. How is South Africa? Is it? It's good hearing from you, and there's a good bunch of people here that came through to not only participate in the Uganda Media Week 2021, where our major theme remains in navigating obstacles in Uganda's journalism. But also to mention, we do have our friends who are online watching off YouTube, and other individuals who are equally on platforms similar to yours, that is off Zoom, among others. And just to briefly just let the individuals here understand that your expertise is spread across East Africa, most of South Africa and other countries. There are some people that are actually familiar with you that I was interacting with, but it's good hearing from you. And right away, because we've been keeping you waiting, we'll be interacting with you later on, but the members who are listening to you will be as well be given an opportunity to pose some questions. Lots of questions have been asked with our previous presenters, especially when it comes to digital and also building quality journalism, which is your specialty, and how you've been able over years to help various media outlets, to remain financially stable amidst also COVID challenges. It's very important that your information and your knowledge ability would be shared in this conference, and would like to welcome you on board.
Thank you. I'm happy to join you. I just want to hear, is my sound okay?
Your sound is loud and clear. Are we loud and clear?
You are. Yes, you are.
Let's proceed on this particular subject of digital business models for building resilience and quality journalism. I will be, of course, engaging with you when it comes to media viability, because it's part of your consultancy, but would like to hear your full presentation on the same.
I think it's still morning again.
Morning.
It's good to see a lot of familiar faces here. I would like to greet everybody. I'm happy to join you. Like I said, I would rather be in Uganda, and those of you who know me, I would rather be there and eating katunda and Rolex. I'm dying to have some Rolex, so you know I love Uganda. So I just want to greet everybody that's in the room and that's going to be in a hybrid situation. Hopefully one of these days we will be face to face. And just greeting all the media managers, media practitioners, and all the development professionals in the room. And let me go ahead and thank you to Emily for this opportunity. I will share my screen. I think the host has to enable me to share my screen. Miss Jane, how are you? Good to see you. Very names and faces. Very, very good to see you too. I'm waiting.
Eva, is there a technical problem?
No, I'm waiting for the host. I think it must be Oscar or Solomon to give me access to share my screen on Zoom. He's done it now. Thank you so much.
Nice. Over to you still.
Okay, so we all know again, thank you so much for the opportunity, I appreciate it. And we know that we're talking about business models, and business models specifically to support quality journalism just digital transition, not just technology, but
I firstly want to thank the news for the incredible contributions they make on a daily basis to society, because sometimes we don't notice. And for me, if journalists are the salt of the earth in their profession, then editors are the gatekeepers and key holders producing a fertile landscape as the fourth estate. However, I think the biggest challenges are that we need a shift in newsrooms. So I want to implore editors to show a willingness to adapt to new ways of newsroom operations, to continue to support remote work, to give journalists more freedom, to allow creativity, and not to go back to business as usual post-pandemic. I also strongly want to encourage editors to allow journalists to become independent content creators in order to sustain themselves and to help sustain the media houses they are attached to. We need to support and respect the rights of journalists. I think this is a big issue in Uganda, not just Uganda, but across Africa. Some of the biggest, what is interesting, if you think about it, some of the biggest stories in digital innovation are independent journalists and influencers driving content and generating sustainable revenue all over the world through blogging, vlogging, podcasting, and use of social media platforms to produce and distribute work as independent thinkers and working as collaborators. Now, another area that's really, really important when we think of media viability, when we think of the digital transition and transformation, is partnership and collaboration for newsrooms. And journalists are another area that is, and I mean, this partnerships of newsrooms and collaborations is an area that has grown exponentially, and it's contributing significantly to financial sustainability. So content development, content curation, distribution in partnership, in collaboration. I remember the story, I think it was at last year's media conference. when I spoke to Jane, the station manager of Speak FM, and I said, how did you guys survive, you know, as a station in a rural area, really from the pandemic? And her response was, I'll never forget this, her response was because of collaboration, because of partnerships, that they were strategic partnerships, that they were able to survive and not have to close down the radio station. And it becomes it's the underpinning issue of media viability success in the digital age. So I think my slides is a little confusing here. I think one of the shifts, the major shifts in journalism is what is called constructive journalism. Now, many of us, I don't know how many of you are aware of constructive journalism, but this is really, there's a growing movement for it. It goes beyond solution journalism. And really, what is constructive journalism about? It is about journalism for tomorrow. The ambition here is to contribute to democracy through critical, constructive journalism. So constructive journalism, just briefly, it focuses on the solutions, not only exposing problems, but to look for all possible solutions. And it covers nuances, you know, to strive for the best objectionable version of the truth and to see the world through both eyes. I think the most important aspect for that may be new to or maybe different than solution journalism is to promote democracy, actively promote democracy, not as an activist, but as a facilitator to engage and facilitate debate, including people in community and people at all levels. So I think this is really an important issue. I want to come to I see my slides are a little, they for some reason, they keep jumping this morning. So I'm having some technological issues. But I'm a proponent of the audience first and being, and
There's some challenges always, and this is online, so the skip is expected. But all the same, I believe, Eva, are you back? Well, let's just also go about a couple of things that she had talked about, where she made an introduction, more so in between coming through on how some media houses would be able to survive, or have been able to survive as we went through COVID-19. That has not been very easy for very many media houses. With the introduction of online outlets and blogs and all the same, I do recall a friend of mine laid off some workers, and they were working online, and I asked a friend that why did you lay them off? Why did you lay off journalists? And he said, those are not journalists. But these are people that have been making contributions and articles that we read every day. He said, those are not journalists. Those are people that write things, and I post them. It's a challenge to the same. Many people at a point, I do remember the Observer, amidst COVID, they at a point stopped publishing on particular days when COVID cases were reported at the New Vision. They also put down a little bit on how much they were putting out, and people were sent home, though were not entirely laid off. But the COVID situation when it comes to journalists and media outlets was a challenge. Most people that actually were sent home have never been called back because the gap was covered, and it clearly shows that you weren't needed. But also she went about something about fake news which is a very, very important thing. I think this particular term was made popular by the former president of the United States, Donald Trump, who kept on saying fake news all the time. Everything was fake news. It became popular, but it was existing. We live in an era where everything runs so fast. When someone sees a news story, they've already put it out. Even actually people that you find professional, when they find a story, they want to be, there was that, that whole thing of I was the first to post it. Even when you just read somewhere, you feel like there's a particular group that has to know that I am very fast when it comes to news, and you post certain things. Many people have regretted that, and they've gone back to apologize to the same. Fake news also at times comes with other individuals who are influencing people who are into the media, and they write stories about certain people, they put them out. And some people don't do background checks, and they just go ahead and they share certain news in any way they please. Fake news can go to an extent of, just trying to damage someone's reputation, among other, intentions. But as she went about many things that she talked about authorities also going ahead to give editors their freedom. Authorities giving editors their freedom. That is not something very easy to advocate for, whether you like it or not. As a journalist or any journalist, let me tell you this, especially in the political environment. Maybe we're going for elections. If you're posting anything about elections, or if you're posting anything political, and at that point, journalism is like it's like time for Christmas. Christmas, people eat a lot of chicken. And if you see that no one is after you, just know they are after someone, and they're busy after someone. So it gets a bit complicated, and the authorities will always love to have that part. They will always want to own that space, to control it whether you like it or not. As we try to get back Eva so that we can finish up with our presentation. Yeah, those two were consulting me. As we have just taken breakfast, they just said, also, we have an hour to eat lunch. I used to look at journalists when they've just joined Newsroom. They come and they are as thin like this. You send them to start covering conferences. 3 weeks and the nigger is like, boom, like what is going on? The one thing that happens in conferences is food. Hey! Some of us would go back forgetting about the stories, and we talk about the food that we ate. So she's here telling me what is going to be on the menu. But also sausages. The chicken should be there as well. But we've got a really serious problem with Eva on the other side. She has a cyber problem. So if time permits, we'll be able to bring her back through. Once again, I would like to welcome you and appreciate the fact that you've spared your time and left out so many things that you would have been doing as a very busy person. But we are here today to go through the third Uganda Media Week. This is 2021. Expect another next year. There's been 2 already that have gone through, as you had, of course, some experiences and what was picked from the past, conferences that happened we had from Caroline, we had from Mr. Mango, and of course from Mosengozi, as they give us the experience. Maybe next year as well, we'll be hearing from you. We're going to be taking a ton of events. If at all you do have a rundown of how our program is supposed to be going, the next discussion goes back to one of the discussions that we almost delved into. And this majorly was about, we discussed so many important things, but someone at a point, we were out on a discussion, and they said, after God, fear money, but after money, fear who? Fear women. But kindly allow me to take you through to another session that has come right on time with our panel that I'm just about to welcome one by one. And our discussion is going to be on strategies for media viability through gender mainstreaming. At a later stage also, watch out for our discussion where we'll be talking about media viability. I hope our video will be ready to explain media viability. We will be introducing it at a later stage. We never got time to do that. And also we'll be going about the media collaborative and strengthening networks across the newsroom. At this particular moment, kindly allow me to welcome the following individuals as they join us at the pulpit, and we take up our discussion. Please, ladies and gentlemen, do welcome Barbara Among. She's coming, right? Barbara Among, there she is. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us. We've been anticipating. Please take a seat. I've been looking forward to seeing you. I love your attire. It's a brilliant one. And please, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Linda Chibombo. I never mentioned Barbara Among happens to be a journalist and trainer. And Linda Chibombo, I don't think she needs also a lot of introduction. It's good to see you. Thanks for joining us. I love your attire too. What is going on? Who said older? That the title is Mother Dinosaur. Things have changed here. But Linda, of course, is from the Nation Media Group. And also, just to sit alongside the two, welcome Joseph Akiso. Joseph Akiso is from the New Vision Bureau Chief, Eastern Region. Mr. Akiso, you didn't get the memo. But Mr. Akiso, why don't you sit between the ladies? Eh? So we want to see whether you are a father dinosaur. And those things of sitting, these ends like a baby dinosaur. But thank you very much, gentlemen and ladies. Online to join us as we try to make some more connections. We'll be welcoming, of course, Jen Angom. She's from Speak FM in Gulu. She'll be joining us for this particular discussion, which I do believe we should be able to pick notes from, move from one area to another, and we interact with these brilliant brains that have joined us for the panel. And as well, still to take up the discussion, my name is Sean Chimuli. And our subject and more so, discussion, comes with a particular statement, which is women count. So you have a duty of distributing the microphone. Unfortunately, we have to only. It starts with a particular, I'll say phrase, women count, and then it goes beyond to mention that strategies for media viability through gender mainstreaming. I think I'm going to start with you, Linda, on the same. When we talk about gender mainstreaming, why do we again take it back to just focusing on saying women count? I don't know where you want to take an approach when it comes to this discussion, especially when we are discussing journalism viability, and this comes with where we are going in the future, where it leaves the women, and why do we have to still go back and make a statement and say women count?
Thank you very much, Sean. I'm very honored to be here today. Let me take my mask off. I hope I'm allowed. I just signed an agreement.
I was standing for you.
Yeah, are we 2 meters apart? Yeah, but thank you so much, and good afternoon. Yes, Sean said my name is Linda Chibombo. A question I asked myself today as I prepared for this interview was, do we think of our work as a calling? Is it a calling? Who's a journalist anyway? Can we actually define a journalist? Do we call ourselves journalists? Yeah? I think a calling like this one takes a lot of courage, it takes a lot of passion, it takes a lot of steadfastness, it does take a lot of resolve. When I was asked to speak on this, I prepared a whole presentation. That's me, I talk a lot. But I asked myself first and foremost, I felt that what I was asked to speak on, simplified, could really be about diversification of representation in the media. By diversification, I mean, male and female. And another thing that I told myself was that it is very true that representation of women in the media, to be honest with you, I was doing a count yesterday afternoon in the newsroom. There were about 20 men yesterday. Wednesday was yesterday, yeah. There were about 20 men and there were about 6 women. And I'm part of those 6 women. In our newsroom, we do not have a single camera person who is female. The reporters, out of about maybe 30 of them, we have about 7 female reporters. I represent the women on the editor's desk. You understand? Now, what I know that in other departments, there might be women. But these are very few. You'll find out of about 7 departments, only 1 is headed by a woman. But why does the discussion about female representation in the newsrooms come about? It's very important. There are issues that need to be addressed. This morning, I was talking to one of my colleagues, just to give me more insight into what I was going to present. She has a concern that you will find stories, the hard topics like parliament, the hard topics like politics. When it comes to the assignments, those are given to the men. The women are going to do issues of, is there a soft human interest thing that you can do? Is there a woman whose goods were stolen on the street? Are the religious leaders going to be speaking about this? So it's the softer issues. And I say to her, then what do you want to report? And she said, I want to go to Somalia. I have made my name in the newspapers, but I want to make a mark on television. Now, this question that you guys are talking about comes after years of, I joined NTV about 7 years ago. Am I talking too much?
I will tell you.
All right. Okay. I joined NTV 7 years ago. And at the time I joined, I remember names like Florence Naluyimba, there was Trudy, there were women. I felt that, I'm joining a place where I can actually make friends. Yes? Now, these women began to leave after some time. And what was sad was they're not actually leaving to go and join another media house for better pay. But they're actually joining to go into PR, or they're actually going into other things. Barbara, you left. Are you with a media house? Jan, are you with a media house? But you left the monitor. I don't see your name anymore. Yeah, but
she's at Media Focus, that's what she said.
Exactly. So there are actually reasons why for this underrepresentation. First and foremost, it comes like I had the discussion earlier. is that it actually comes from management. I know that people sometimes advertise and say females are encouraged to apply, but that might just be on paper. And I'm not talking about NTV alone, please. I'm talking about all media houses. You're going to find also that there are instances where there are certain reasons as to why people leave the media houses. I know one of them is when we get pregnant or when we want to start a family, when we want to become parents. I am lucky, and I count myself very lucky, that I'm one of those dinosaurs who has managed to plow through this through the help of my parents, them actually looking after my children. But there are times I sit back and I say, did I miss certain steps in my children's lives? Can I sit down with them and say, did you miss your mother? I will tag myself. I am a single mother. I have 2 children. They are grown up now. They are working. But there are times I ask myself, if my mother was not around all the time because she said she was working, how would I feel? So I said, I'm lucky I'm one of those older people who chose to stay. But to be honest with you, it is not easy. There are times when I feel like I'm really tired. I am happy that I work in a place where women are respected, where we don't have people bandying around words like, you have a good body. A man, I'm saying, you have a good body, or I like your hair. You know, sometimes we actually mistake men when they compliment us for doing these things. But I have tried to join a media house. And the first thing that the person who I thought was going to employ me told me, he warned me. And he said, if you want to get a job here, be ready to sleep with the boss. That is what he told me.
Linda. I'm going to come back to you.
Thank you so much. Yes, I said I can go on.
I'm going to come back to you, but I'm going to pick it from right where the boss told you something. Reason why I stopped you to that, we would like to get some expressions from, of course, Jen Angom, who is from Speak FM Gulu. Reason why I would like to first go to her is because she's online. You never know when we can lose her. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much. I hope you can.
You're joining a panel that includes Barbara Mong, Linda Chibombo, and Joseph Akiso. Sean, the moderator, later on will be interacting with the crowd of more than 40 people that are participating in this. The main question here goes back to gender mainstreaming, but there is a statement that comes before that, and that is women count. I don't know what's happening in journalism and with journalists. Why do we still have to focus on mentioning that women count? That means that there is a problem. By the end of this particular conference, we'd like to find solutions to such problems. Where do you pick up on this particular issue?
Thank you very much, Sean. And had begun bringing out some of the issues. Back to her. But my name is Angom Jane Okwera. I'm joining in from Gulu. I have worked at Speak FM for the last 10 years, and I'm happy to be on this panel yet again. I have participated in the previous Media Week engagements, and I'm excited that I'm here yet again. Indeed, women count. Why are we even having this conversation if we all know that? The challenges have been that, you know, when we talk about gender, there are 2 key things. One, it is the social constructs, the things people have made us believe about men and then about women. And then there is the biological functions of the 2 genders, the male and the female. My being a woman may not stop me from doing certain things that a man can do. But because society has made people to believe that women, for example, when girls are growing up, they are told you can't climb a tree, but boys can climb trees. That is the simplest example I'll use. So the society has made their own constructs of what girls can do, women can do, and what boys can do and men can do. Now we see this kind of thinking moving towards even the media house. So that becomes a barrier. Secondly, there are certain aspects of life because of the biological functions that a woman will have to go through and navigate even as they are a professional. So what happens is that a lot of times, the managers, the editors, and the people around us do not put on a gender lens, which provides for equity and equality. These two things are again different. When we say equity, then what we mean is that you are aware about the challenges that a woman might go through at a certain period, but you make it deliberate to support them through that. A case in point is that you have a female reporter. The female reporter conceives. How do you handle that? For TV, you have a female news anchor. And how do you handle that through the 9 months? You know that the body shape will keep changing. And then you have a budget maybe for the wardrobe. How do you handle that? Do you give them money once in 6 months? Will they still be able to look good on the screen? So the challenges are that there are those biological functions that women have to navigate through with, even as they are professionals, as they continue doing their work. What then happens is that in media houses and in the places of work, managers and editors sometimes do not have the patience to deal with this truth. And yet it is not that they are incompetent, but it's just because of the fact of life that they're going through that situation. So I will give you some examples from Speak FM. Speak FM is affiliated to Forum for Women in Democracy, and we are very keen on gender mainstreaming or wearing a gender lens in what we do. One of the things that we do, for example, is that we are cognizant of these facts. So we give the paid leave for 3 months for a female journalist or a female programmer. And then we also discuss when they are ready to come back to work, what works best for them. Are they able to come to work with their baby and a helper, and we provide space for the babysitter and this baby while the mother works? If that is so, we do that. And the other thing that we also do is that we discuss the work schedules, and we are careful to be adaptive to the circumstances and the times, and we give this specific female journalist, the opportunity to work at certain hours that is more, appropriate for them, and they're able to attend to both, to their motherly role, but also to their work. So the whole point is that it goes back to being intentional and being very, very critical of what steps you're taking that will hold the female journalists in the industry. Linda said that lots of female journalists leave the industry, and they do so for good reasons. Sometimes it's just the hostility, the environment is so hostile. It's very hostile. You cannot put your edge on hold, and yet you cannot also do your work when you're pregnant, and the environment doesn't allow you to do that. You've gotten married, you need to start a family, but the circumstances are just too hostile. So the discussion which would lead to certain solutions is about being cognizant of these things that women need to go through, and then providing for equity. And providing for equity does not mean that you totally take away from them the responsibility, but you work out timetables and programs that are appropriate and that suit both. Now, this is not easy to come to if you do not have a very good policy on gender, if you do not have a good policy on human resource management, if you do not have a good policy and practice on inclusion. So it goes back to who you are, what you want to do, and then how that plays out. Otherwise, the female journalists are out there. They are good at their work. The challenges are basically the issues of biological functions, but also the gender constructs, the things that we have believed that women can do and they cannot do. When you find that there are these assignments which we think that we cannot to the female journalists because they cannot handle it well, that is already a barrier and an obstacle. But who told you they cannot do it? You've not even given them a chance to do it. So how is it that you're can do all these things? So it goes back to, again, like I said, the constructs, the ideas, the beliefs, and the myths that have been created around the different sexes, what women can do, what men can do, and vice versa. So unless we are willing to confront that and then have a mindset change, we shall continue to see these challenges. But I want to end that women count. We have seen
Mujoma, I believe that there is a factor here that is coming in through strongly. One of the issues that you talked about came through with a female journalist not being able to carry a camera. I've seen this before. There's a young lady that had joined, at that time I think I was at NBS, and she specifically said that she wanted to become a camera person, and I will not deny it was quite a little bit hard for her. She had about 3 different nicknames, but she made it through. Like really, if I say those names, then you will stop laughing. But I'm going to drag a particular question straight to you, Barbara. I'm not going to go back to mentioning the subject where we say women count and the like. I think there's something that is bouncing back over and over and over and over again. It's about the difference between man and woman and how we do connect. But let me just slightly put it on the side and move into a direct question. I think Linda asked you a question. She clearly said, are you still practicing? And you clearly just smiled like you did. That means that you're not. Are we looking at similar issues that almost Linda started talking about that must have driven you out of being in the newsroom? Before you even go ahead with that, at one point I was in the lift with a boss, my colleague who was female. Then there I was, and my colleague, female colleague, told the boss that thank you for helping me here and here. So when we got down to the lift, I was supposed to help her get home. But before she left, my boss first called her and talked to her. So when we sat in the car, she was a bit unhappy. And she told me that, can you imagine, so-and-so has asked me if I'm pregnant. And then you also mentioned that you dare not be pregnant. I think in Uganda, I've not seen a pregnant news anchor. I've not seen that. I've on air? No. Like, how many have you seen on air presenting news when they're pregnant? I've only seen them on other media houses, but not in Uganda. So it's the case here. Until being, she went off. The moment it was mentioned, okay, everyone knew that she's now pregnant. When Josephine was pregnant, everyone was like, now she's pregnant. Everyone was like, now she's pregnant. But then they'd never get to an extent where you stand up. Sorry about that, but I would never get to that extent. The moment it starts, you get off. Even all my colleagues that I know, when Mildred was, the moment she was getting there, she was off. When Joy was, and she was in Nairobi, when she started, they get off. But let's get to the point of understanding your point of working out. Did things get better elsewhere?
3 years, I was in Arusha, that's where I was working. But I'm happy to be home. I'm not 100% out of the media world because I work as a media trainer with the IWMF, that's the International Women Media Foundation. At IWMF, we work to actually unleash the power of women bylines, you know, in the media, through trainings, through policies, through awards, through funding, where they give you money from as low as $1,000 to $10,000, depending on the project that you're doing, to actually go to those unreported, unrepresented places and actually you do the stories that no one wants to do. So IWF works to unleash the power of the female bylines. So sorry for the advert on your platform, Jan, but please,
we'll talk later.
For the female journalists and even the male journalists, because right now actually I have 10 male journalists in my class, a combination of South Africans and Ugandans, which is quite interesting. Two different worlds, journalists from two different cultures, you know, coming together in one class. It's a very interesting class. And the class is on marginalized persons.
And you're still advertising. The red card is going
No,
up
no,
like
it's
this.
because I want them to know that
It's okay.
women
It's
count,
okay.
that there's a specific organization that just work to make women count in terms of your bylines, in terms of your skills, and also in terms of your mentorship. It counts, it counts. So for me, but also I'm in the communication world, partly, doing work with the Equity Group Foundation, which is basically about development and social, let me leave that advert at that point. Yes, so women counts, yes. Women counts just because if I ask each and everyone in this room, if I ask Esther, I can see your name from here. If I ask Omunya, I can see his name from here. If I ask Sean to go out and bring me a story, none of you will bring me the same angle of that story. You'll bring me different angles. You're like, oh, so for me, I think it's about a mother who couldn't afford medical bills and then she died. It's just that. It's the hard news, the hard part of it. Esther, from her lens as a woman, she will describe and give the details of what this woman was going through to actually deliver this baby, or what the doctors were actually going through to ensure that they saved the life of this mother. And then Umonya may actually come with the angle of, you know, the husband couldn't pay money, was frantically running around to look for money. Now, because our views varies, we will never see anything from the same lens. It matters to have everyone in the newsroom, to have a female lens in the newsroom, to have a male lens in the newsroom. It's never just the same. The time I was news editor at Monitor, every time we had the editors meeting, I was the only female, of course, editor there. Among Alex was there and so many others. But so you have Alex with his deep voice ranting around, you know, let's look at the systems. Let's look at the processes. And I'm saying, no, news is about people. Let's look at the people impacted by these stories. News is about people. We are telling people's stories. So when you have a woman in the newsroom, she is going to approach the news from that little detail that everyone else will ignore. So we need to have that perspective in the newsroom. It matters to have him in the newsroom. The other reason why women matter is that the societal norms, like where we live, we all know, you know, that people say, you know, women are insensitive, women, there are all these negativities that are put around women, okay? And there are all these biases. That's why we have affirmative action by government. That's why we have, you know, all these NGOs supporting. Because we just know that they're disadvantaged right from the time they're actually born. From the time they scan and say, you're going to have a baby girl, already, you know, the in-laws, the parents, everyone in the village, you know, there's a bias against you. So they have to fight through these biases, okay, to get to the top. Now, because of this, we need to have policies in place that will ease the way for them, that will open the way for them, that will actually allow them have the skills, allow them actually practice and also exercise their talents, okay, in a way that they want, not someone dictating how they actually should do it. So in the newsrooms, you know, there should be policies on assigning. How do you assign a journalist? Do you assign her because she's woman? Do you assign him because he's male? Or do you assign them because they have the skills to actually do the job? So those policies should be in place that should take away the biases when it comes to assignments. There should be policies that just even take care of the biological makeup of a woman, okay? A mother who is breastfeeding, there should be a room there. A lady who is going through a certain process, there should be. She's in the field. I remember one time we were in the field, and this was with the IWMF, because we bring journalists from across the world and take them. And we were going to Congo, actually. And this lady was going to wait the next week, and she had her gown at the back of the car, you know? So, but are there policies that will take care of such a person, okay? Because to a female, a wedding is a big deal, isn't it? And she's still going to do her story. And she had her wedding gown at the back of the car, okay? So how do you take care of that mixed emotions of someone who is in the field and actually this is a big deal to her? So those policies must be in place. Policies of someone who is actually pregnant, expecting, should be in place. It's interesting when you talk about, I've never seen a woman who is heavily pregnant on the TV screen. One, I think it's just out of respect for her, because when you're expecting, there are a million things you're going through. So just for respect of that person, you don't need to have them on the screen. And two, for comfort, you know, most of them actually sit. Rachel, Josephine, and everyone, they're actually there. You don't see it because they're seated. At that point, the setup is changed. To take care, it's a deliberate policy that people have on television. So when we talk about policies take care of such. You don't see it, but in the back, you know, behind the scene, there's a lot actually happening. Also, you need policies for the sake of mentoring and skilling these women. There are certain skills that we actually need, but this is for everyone in the newsroom. So it's a deliberate policy that you need to implement to say, this lady lacks this skill, this male lacks this skill, we need to have it. So women count just because of that. I'm not going into why I left the newsroom, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, the fortunate bit is like you still have another round to go about the same. This gets a little bit interesting when we discuss the whole issue about making sure that there are strategies for media viability through gender mainstreaming. And the only man in the middle of two ladies, I think has been wondering, this guy just doesn't want me to talk. Mr. Joseph Akiso, I do believe that the New Vision, especially more so across, it being the Eastern region, you do have a big say in whichever position you're in. And as we go about mentioning that women count, you see now why women count. That gentleman was seated there waiting for me, a gentleman again, to bring it. But thank you very much. Let's talk about this subject. I'll go back into Linda's direction of something that she had mentioned. Where I made her stop, she had mentioned that someone had told her, if I recall very well, that there's a possibility you might have to go become successful here because you have to sleep with the boss, to be blatant. And your position is not a junior position. Your position is a boss position. Where do you pick up on this subject? You've had the ladies, you've had Jen, of course you've had what Linda has said, and you've had what Barbara said. Let's hear it from you, of course, and see where you have to start from, Joseph.
Thank you very much. Just like my colleagues, I heavily believe and accept that women count. Because if you go to definitions of democracy, you cannot talk about a perfect democracy without inclusion of the women or basically issues of gender. So if you're talking about a perfect democracy, which should be an environment in which media platforms should be operating, there is a need to make sure that there is inclusion of the women. So in terms of women matter, yes, they do matter. You talked about issues of a boss having interest in a staff. I think this takes us back to relationships at workplaces, yes, but in terms of long term, it takes us back to issues of culture, because the dominance in character that the male always have and the cultural attitudes makes them feel that they have dominion over the women. So in one way or the other, whether you are in a supervision position or any place of governance, normally that male ego does come in. So I think in order to reduce the effect that this has, I've always discussed with colleagues that we might have to rewrite a few other lenses of the media ethics to cater for the new trends that are coming up. I don't know if I've said it.
I beg your pardon?
I was asking whether I was clear with that.
No, I was actually just noting that to grow about the same.
Yes. So in terms of women, mattering, like I said, it's a core. It's something that we should do. However, there's been a growing trend of sexual harassment in the newsrooms.
You talked about rewriting.
Rewriting,
you
yes.
used the word rewriting. That's
Okay, what I was saying
thinking
was...
who wrote that in the first place?
There was a writing from, from Fortune, who said that sometimes the media houses have to write their ethics to cater for the, the current issues that are happening, so that we get to abscond. There's some Western cultures that have been inscribed into the media policies. Now, what we need to do is to find ways whereby we write those policies to fit into, sorry?
I would still want to go about the same, because we are talking about something that happens practically.
Yes.
And I don't think it's written anywhere in any media houses, policy.
Yeah.
Not anywhere. Especially if at all you put the issue that Linda was going about, and more so slightly what Barbara was talking about. This comes with, you talked about dominance. It's not scripted.
Yeah.
I do believe it just happens either naturally or out of the mind that men do this and the like. Do we still have to go back and document this? Or it's just a behavior change?
I think it's more of a behavior change. But since you're dealing with issues of policy in the newsrooms, it has to be documented, because then you handle it as an internal policy. For example, how many media houses have issues of sexual harassment in their human resource policy? Because if these issues don't happen, or they are not clearly spelled out in their policies, then it's very difficult to hold those who are caught guilty, culpable. So we have to find ways whereby issues of sexual harassment are clearly, stipulated into the media policies.
I do believe all that much actually is stipulated. Also, let's go back to the fact that I do believe every media house, and more so companies, have a policy where there should, in the first place, on actually a decent level, you shouldn't have a relationship with a colleague from the same workplace.
Yeah.
Now, putting it to a level of someone coming through to maybe report sexual harassment, that might be hard. This is a silent killer. It's the same reason as to why, at a point earlier on, I talked about something that maybe some women prefer keeping quiet. Like, I don't think there's any, so many women that are going to come through and say, HR told me that the only way that I'm going to be able to stay in this position is because I have to give something. I think there has to be something that has to be revised. More so, if we go back to the newsrooms or our workplaces, that is just beyond documentation. And I think that's part of, that's one of the reasons that we might be looking for today.
Okay. I was saying that, very many policies are actually documented, and they do exist. But if you do not actualize those policies, then they just remain into the documents. So there has to be a system whereby, beyond the documentation, then what gets to be done. So it depends, first of all, on the orientation that the team is given onset as they enter into the places. It also comes up with issues of recruitment. Whom do you recruit? How do you do the background checks of the persons that you're recruiting? And then there has to be a system of, if you're faulted, what gets to be done? So if we begin, placing up a system whereby there is punishment, and it's very clearly done, and then I'm sure that it can reduce the issues of the vice in that other, context.
I'll go to the point where clearly Linda said, sleep with the boss. Who's going to punish the boss?
You know, every other boss has a supervisor. So after the boss, there is another supervisor above the boss. So the issues of punishment, because now what happens is you can't die in silence. My issue is if there is an issue, there are very many channels that these things can be, handled within the system. So if the boss is the one who has an issue with you, there are very many platforms that this can be raised up. One is that you can go above the boss, engage it with your HR, or engage it with the board.
The HR?
Now, sure. Now, this is what I'm saying is if you have an effective governance system in your media house, that means that the HR knows the power that she has, the powers to investigate. You have the audit system. You have the whistleblower policies. So if you have all these policies working effectively well, there should be no problem of you reporting your boss. Because the management system and the governance system that you have at your workplace should be able to provide all avenues of how the things are handled. So if you don't have that system, or if the system is not being trusted, then that becomes another issue that you have to revive. But otherwise, in every institution, there has to be ways whereby all these complaints are channeled, and they are channeled and discussed in the logical conclusion. But if you have a system which is not effective, and you have the manager who is untouchable, then you have to discuss it with your team and see how to revive it. But besides that, there are also other institutions out of your newsroom or out of your media house that handle these issues. You can go to the labor courts, you can go to the courts of law, and then you have the things reported.
When you're still working there or when you've left?
When you're still working there, you do. Because the issue is, there is a policy that guides the way all the organizations operate. And the policies are not selective. They are for everyone. So when you're within the system and working within the system and you find yourself in conflict with the system, it is easier for you to discuss it while you're within the system. But if the system does not protect the person who reports, then you have to find ways of re-engaging the system and then you rewrite it. So it's very possible. Not all these policies are written on rock. They can be discussed at any other time, and then they are rewritten to cater for the current trends.
Joseph, I'm going to do this. Eva tried bouncing back to us. I don't know whether she's following the conversation or it is. Eva, is this related to our discussion, women count strategies for media viability through gender mainstreaming?
It's about this discussion. I wasn't sure if you're taking comments, but I would like to comment. Hi, are you able to hear me? Hello?
Yes, Eva, we can hear you loud and clear.
I was saying, yes, I would like to comment on this.
Eva, proceed, please.
You. I think, I agree with the speaker to some degree that I think if you speak under the assumption that there's management systems and governance systems in place, that usually doesn't apply to small and medium-sized media houses, especially in rural areas. They don't have that capacity. And in my experience traveling across Uganda, most of the small to medium sized radio stations and media houses don't have HR support. On top of that, you now expect women to go to a male manager and a male dominated board to address issue of sexual harassment. That is why it's not happening. I think as a manager, especially if you're a male manager, which we know the majority is, one thing would be that the manager create a space for women to start talking about the issue by simply letting them know that sexual harassment is not something that they will allow in the workplace. It's unacceptable. You don't have to have all the skills and knowledge about it, but to start having the conversation with women and then maybe partnering with NGOs that are doing the work, even organizations like Mama FM that are also doing the work and have policies and procedures in place. But those policies and procedures are kind of useless when women don't feel safe, when those in authority that they work with are the one abusing them. They are not going to go to a labor court. They're not going to go to any authority figure. None of those things are going to happen. That is why women are silent. Now, we have gone through the same issue during apartheid years and post-apartheid years in South Africa. And, you know, our former President Nelson Mandela was a key in, you know, the promotion of women and, you know, making sure that women has a voice. But still today, we know sexual abuse continues both in the workplace and in the home environment. Now we know that in this particular case in South Africa, women have come forward in large numbers and large percentages to come and complain about sexual harassment. Unfortunately, the system itself in South Africa victimizes the victims. And we see that in many countries. So my advice would be create a safe environment. Ask the women. A man cannot decide for women what procedures and policies and processes are going to work for them. I think just starting the conversation, just opening up, just letting men and women in the workplace know it's not acceptable and having a hotline for it and giving a voice to women. If they are not able to speak to you, at least they know that this is not acceptable to the top management. That alone, that conversation alone is going to open many doors. It's going to soften things. It's going to create an opportunity for women to feel like, oh, okay, maybe we matter. Maybe sexual harassment in the workplace is something that will not be accepted because the top management is saying so. Even without policy, you can go ahead and know.
Joseph, I don't know if you want to do a conclusion on the point you are trying to arrive home, but I would like to run quickly. I would like to run quickly to Linda, who left a point halfway. You are trying to describe an environment in the newsroom, which question actually I wanted to ask you, Barbara, but I think I will take it this other direction. How hard is it for a woman journalist to walk into, because I do believe all of you are speaking from an angle where you've become editors, you've become supervisors, you've become managers. That means that there has been a journey. There's been a journey. You had almost started telling us on that particular journey. How rough is this? If you can use one pointers, one to another, as we try to catch up with time.
Okay. That was the third time that was happening. The first time was at Radio Uganda with an editor, an assigning editor. The next time was with an Indian boss who tried to kiss me in the morning. At that point, I was naive. And not only that, the company did not have an HR person. There was none. And because I was so naive, I decided to keep quiet about it. And he went to the extent of telling me, WBS is across the road. Can I go and get you a job there if you don't want to accept my advances? And I remembered something when I was getting that job. But he asked me a question, and he said, are you married? I said, no. The second question was, do you have children? That is where the abuse started. Now, I am privileged, like I say, to work in a place at NTV where we do have that in our HR policy. I have never seen a case that has been brought up. Maybe it's been silent. You know, those ones are always silent. But then I also know that as Ugandans, we have a culture of, I just kept quiet about it. I think, what can I say? It's a culture that we are actually taught at home. You understand? However, I thank God that I am very assertive. And this is what I tell the young females who come into our newsroom, especially as interns or as new. You know, you act like a kind of mother to them. I have seen this happening. It was in a meeting in the morning. I was very disturbed some years back. There was an intern who was sitting somewhere near we were in the morning meet where we pitch. And there was a reporter sitting behind this girl. She had a lot of hair on her head. And he was touching her in the head. You know, like it was so disturbing, guys.
Maybe the hair was itching.
No. And I was saying that it goes back to one, you need to know your worth. That's what I tell these people. Know your worth. Know that when you are going into a media house, there are certain things you don't stand for.
Apart from the bosses, let's describe the environment where women, or young ladies, do interact with their fellow on same level male workmates. Like, like you've come in, probably you are young, and you have these young boys that are going to tell you you're using the same car, go to the field, and the like. Are they supportive? Are they funny? Like, how do you describe the situation there? Does this contribute to a problem, making the environment for young ladies or women to be a journalist?
I said earlier, I don't think I've worked in such a place. I've worked in places where people are respectful. At NTV, we have a very respectful culture. Nobody is going to harass you in any way. Maybe it's happening in those places where I am not, but I've not seen it happen. I've never seen any woman coming to me and complaining.
And professionally, the male counterparts are supportive.
They are very supportive. Very, very, very supportive. I mean, they're as supportive as if a woman is in her period and she's having, all the, whatever happens, like I have a backache, I have this. You can actually walk up to somebody and the person will be like, oh, no, it's okay. It's okay, you can take the day off. And we need that.
Maybe, Linda, you mind a lot of your businesses. These male people don't ask for cookies at the end of the day.
By the way, I am a minder of my business. And I'll tell you truthfully, let me say again, I am lucky that people actually bring their issues to me. Do you understand? Because when they bring them to me, I will handle them in a certain way.
I'd like to go to Barbara. There's something she wanted to say. But Linda, you know why they come to you. You know when you're going to sit there, you're thumb-chesting, saying that we are the dinosaurs. So maybe they go to you because you are Senga. But let's go. Let's find out what did you want to pick up with, Barbara?
Thank you. But, it's good to have someone like Linda in the newsroom where people can, a person that's the female journalist can actually run to and share their experiences or share what's happening, and then they get help. In my newsroom, it was the same, I'm no nonsense. I bring all my Luo character into the newsroom, and you touch a female journalist, you pack and go. There is no two way about it. So if you have the leadership that's very deliberate about this, then people be very careful, with their words, their actions, and everything they do. But the majority of our newsrooms, let's just go outside Kampala to 99% of the newsrooms in rural Uganda, where, the person who is your editor is not even a journalist, is the relative to the MP who owns that radio station, and you actually have no voice at all. I've seen several of these actually outside when I was training, when I was moving around, and it's still actually happening right now. The one thing we did, let me give an example of Fort Poto. There's a lady called Sylvia Kugonza, and Sylvia shared this with me. I'm not saying she shared that she was sexually harassed, but she shared with me what was actually happening in that region. And we did a deliberate training for that out of our own, as a group of female journalists, like, no, let's train these people to fight for themselves. Let's empower them. Let's give the skills. Now, for me, what I want to say is that the power of networking as female journalists, either in the district or in that newsroom or in the region. Can we encourage them and help them to come together? We empower them to actually face this male. Actually, it doesn't only happen in the newsroom, but with sources. I have been sexually harassed by sources, actually. And these are sources who are very powerful, How I dealt with those situations is quite different from how you deal with it when you're in the newsroom, actually. Now, the newsroom could actually be the easiest. Outside, when you're dealing with a source and you need information from this person who is trying to sexually harass you, how do you deal with that? That's another ball game altogether outside the newsroom. So there must be policies for both inside and outside the newsroom. So for me, the power of networking, where you will report to Esther, Esther will share with Linda and everyone, and this male colleague will know that these ladies here are not going to give you an easy life in this newsroom. They are actually going to give me a very difficult time. They're going to give me hell, and I'll get out. That will actually stop him from doing it. Because he will know, okay, Sean is our editor. Sean may not defend the lady, but Linda, Esther, Barbara, who is in that newsroom, will actually deal with me. You see. So the power of networking, the power of unity as female journalists really, really helps a lot where you don't have an HR, where you don't have a system. The other thing is also building sources outside the newsroom who are in the area of human rights, where you can report and they'll make noise on your behalf. So you stay in the newsroom, you remain in the newsroom, but you give them all the information that they actually need to take action against this newsroom or actually action against this individual who is sexually harassing you. So that outlet is available as a journalist. When you go out to interview sources, build relationships with them, especially those in the area of human rights. So this will become your run-to points, not only for news, but also for people who can speak for you.
A male leader. Do you have issues where instead the female, no, this I'm going to say like boldly, the female instead position themselves to be vulnerable, whereby it puts you in temptation? Like, for example, we used to have an excuse that a girl came dressed skimpy, so someone would react with that and say, it was because of that, oh my God, I couldn't resist that. As a boss, I do believe some, it depends on how they were brought up, some would position themselves to, you know, to have you take advantage of them. How do you deal with situations like that in your environment?
Thank you very much, Sean. My experience has been that it has always been a two-way. And when you're coming to solve such issues, there's always a counter-accusation, whereby the females feel it's the male who did the advances. And then the males have also been saying normally it's the females who do the advances. So it has been one of the greatest or complicated issues to solve, because you need to get one person who is guilty, and somehow every other person is playing God on their sides. Again, those issues like, not really that she was dressed in a very skimpy way, but we have had some situations whereby, the ladies act so friendly, and then they ask you if you would go with them out for either an evening. Then later on, when things go sour, the lady then uses that evening as an evidence against you for having, made some advances. And, as a man, very many men tend to fail to defend themselves at that level. So it has been a bit of, with my experience, a complicated case to find out, because there's a thin line between two guys who agreed to get into a relationship, which then went sour, then one comes up to raise it as a complaint, and then the other line of actual sexual harassment. Normally, the persons involved into such an occurrence have had a history together. You realize that it's not a one-off. They have been friends for quite a very long time. And then somewhere there's a disagreement, then it qualifies to be sexual harassment. So it has been quite complicated in getting solutions, but also to help such parties. Because at the level of discussion, when you're having one-on-one with them, you realize that it's true, the fellows actually have had a history together. Then somewhere things went sour, and then one comes out and calls it sexual harassment.
When it comes to the factor of empowerment and professionalism, is there a lot of support that is being given to the other gender, the female gender?
True. We have no dress code policy as Vision. We normally advise that you should dress smart. But now when you're coming to defining what smart means, it also becomes a problem. But also one can argue and say, the way I dress, to me, I'm comfortable. It shouldn't be a reason that you should make advances, towards me. So yes, we have policies that guide how both parties should be able to behave at the workspace. We talk to the fellows almost every other week. We normally have one-on-ones with them. If we realize that one fellow is getting overboard, we normally have a conversation, so that we get to understand whether there's actually an element of sexual harassment, or it is a friendly system which is going sour. So there is very strong support. However, the challenge has been that, just like you said, the newsroom tends to be much of male-dominated. And the females may not feel very comfortable to come and disclose their issues to the senior male-dominated management team. So then it leaves the ladies vulnerable into solving the issues amongst themselves, and yet they may not even have the governance capacity to come to conclusions or to solutions. But in real, giving them emotional support, talking to them, guiding them, it's always done. Every time that we get interns, we normally take them through a process of this is the culture of the institution. These are the probable risks that you can have when you're here. The history has shown that a few girls have gotten sexually harassed, just like a few boys have equally gotten harassed. So we let you know the probable challenges that you might face early enough and prepare you for it. But also we do caution them that in as much as you have a one-on-one relationship which is very friendly, be very careful that it doesn't cross the line and then it goes into sexual harassment. So
Nice.
there's a lot of support that is given to the teams.
Thank you very much. And I moved this particular point because I remember that Jan has been in various capacities and serving as a journalist, and more so. Could be having some points that you could share with us, especially when it comes to the point where we need to see media viability on the time, in the terms of gender mainstream and the like. I don't know what you have to say about this. There could be something itching because I can see it.
Okay, yeah, thanks a lot, and thanks panelists for your submissions. Joseph, I don't know, I mean, in another context, we'd really take you on many other bits about some of the things you're saying, because men usually don't have some of the privileges I mean, some of those, they don't have such an environment that they struggle with compared to the women. But safety is very important. It's a personal issue, yes, but it's also a policy issue, right? If you come into a country where there are policies of entry, for example, COVID-19 restrictions, you only work with what is given, what's there, and they are being implemented. But now, if we do not have any policies that are really obvious, that are being lived and walked by in the newsrooms, then there's going to be a problem. Safety is a problem, number one. Content, in terms of media viability, we believe that content is very important. It can draw the money in. But if you look at the statistics, women still remain underreported, right? We talked earlier in the morning, and that other newsroom that suggested that women are not there is actually endorsing a problem, you get? And then if more women, and it's an opportunity for more women to speak, when they're allowed to speak, more issues about women are raised, and these come down, these are critical developmental issues. So in terms of content, it's very important. In terms of audiences, how have we decided to be intentional about the female audiences? Have we put them into consideration in how we are speaking to them, how we are presenting the pregnant women in the newsroom? What does that tell to the rest of the audiences out there? So there's content, there's audiences, there is just basic justice in the newsroom. If you think that women cannot bring you enough money in the media houses, what are you doing about it? Have you tried to make the environment safer for women? So we have worked with different media houses, and they have done certain things. I think one radio station in Arua has decided to make a nursery for women, right? Just something as simple as that, a nursery where women can go and breastfeed, right? Instead of them running home and feeling discouraged and going away. And because of that, they stay in, they do their work, and they're safe. So the most important thing is doing something and being intentional about it. It converts into good journalism eventually, and actually good business if you are intentional.
See, I told you, she must have had something itching, but brilliant point right there. And if you look at the clock, it should be an open session right now. Thanks very much, Jan, for that. And I think you create space out of what we have had and out of what we haven't said. There could be a point that you have with you somewhere where you're seated, and I'll be grateful to get back to you if you have any questions, comments, and almost so get to someone about something. Please feel free to raise your hand. I will walk to you, and we'll go about the same. Anyone so far? Okay, that hand was fast. Then I'll come back to you. You see, we start slowly when there are two.
I wanted to ask the panelists, you sort of have talked about the sexual aspect of the debate, and I felt I wanted to ask, could you share a little bit the other one or two things that can help bring up the ladies? Because also when we keep looking at that, while it is a big subject, I agree, but for purposes of us learning and those online and maybe wherever those who are following, what other aspects that can uplift women or ladies who are in the field of journalism or media practitioner? Thanks very much.
Was that addressed to anyone in particular? All of them. I decide who is going to react to that.
Maybe I could just start. You know, issues of media viability are a bit beyond, or sexual harassment is just one hindrance to media viability. Because media viability is about how do you operate media today, tomorrow, but also for the future. In terms of programming, but also to make it sustainable in terms of revenue, because media platforms are normally created for different reasons, and one of them could be audiences, and the other one definitely is revenue. So there is a very high issue of profitability. So media houses several times have been thinking of very many alternative ways of making money, apart from the usual advertising things that they do, more of typical of the legacy media. But now in context with issues of gender, media houses need to find ways of how do you use your gender lens in order to either attract audiences, but also to turn around your figures into profitability. So like it was said before, you either go for partnerships with institutions that are investing money onto issues of gender, or you decide to just go into creatives where you design your programs and then attract normal revenue. So there's been a bit of absence of the gender in the media programming. However, like you notice, there's also a lot of funding from different sources that are targeting the women. So all the media houses need to do is to tailor their creativity, their innovation onto those thematic areas so that they're able to transform it into business platforms or into business prospects. So it's just basically on how the media houses are able to innovate around issues of gender, to turn them around into revenue and seek issues of profitability. Definitely, any institution that believes in democracy, that believes in participation and active participation, will want to work or associate with the media platforms that consider, or that embrace women or women programming. So it's basically just how you're going to twist around your programming, your editorial policies, how you're investing on how active women are conversing, and then you can be able to turn it around into profitability. I'm sure my colleagues might have some additions to make.
As NMG, we deliberately went out to create a television station for women. That is Spark Television.
For women?
For women. And I'm not lying to you, women actually watch that television.
You've started sidelining us, but it's okay.
Your problem.
The boy child has suffered. It's okay.
No, we actually realized that if you looked at the people who are watching NTV, I mean, it goes down to a woman is not going to watch television news because her husband is so hooked onto the anchor who is anchoring. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like,
no, I don't understand.
Every time at 9 p.m. you have an appointment with her. So I'm not going to watch. But anyway, let me just go back to the point. So we deliberately went out to create a television station for women. But if I go back to your question, I think, one, we need to understand that women are multitaskers. When I joined NTV, there were 3 ladies. I used to call them the 3 musketeers. Rose, Diana, and Kevin. Those women had impact. If you actually look at, we actually do have impact. Like Barbara was talking and she was saying, we give something a new perspective. So there's less testosterone around issues in a media house, okay? We need to invest in training and career mentorship to improve the quality of our output. We can also mentor other women who come into our spaces. I think it's also important to identify talent and to put people in places where they ought to be. This goes back to management. Okay? Many women are disappearing from the media, we know that. But we need to reduce absenteeism. My baby was sick. I had my period. You know, that kind of stuff. Then they talked about recommending fair HR systems, things like daycare. Kind of utopia. I don't know if that can work. I was also thinking
you can imagine it's happening in Gulu.
I was shocked, by the way. That is actually happening. I remember a woman who wanted to keep her breast milk in the fridge. And people complained, how do you put breast milk in our fridge where our sodas are? You understand, it's that bad. But I went down to even start thinking of, if you gave me a gym at my workplace, I'll be honest with you, I want to be in shape. I want to keep in shape.
Linda, we have journalists here who are talking about not being paid. You're talking about gym.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I was saying. This is an utopian world. This is my wish list. Okay. This is my wish list. Yes. I was saying also that media houses should encourage women to apply and to join journalism. Then when the opportunity is given to you, dear ladies, please seize that opportunity. Seize that opportunity when it is given to you. Don't start these issues of mana. Seize it. See what happens. Try. If you fail, you failed, but at least you tried. Okay? Pay us better, please. If there are any people in management here, please do pay us better. I don't know what happens on other people's payrolls because I don't look, like I said, I don't snoop. But I don't know what happens. But pay me better. You will make me stay. Okay? I think women make good managers. Yeah, I think that's it really. But we should also start thinking of providing positive role models where younger people come in and say, I want to be like that person. I want to be like that person. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Before I hear from you, Barbara, there's one Dorothy online. I don't know if she's still running. And our colleagues who are watching off Zoom, we appreciate they that are watching on YouTube. We still know you're there as our social media platforms are active. Is Dorothy still there? I saw Jen also bouncing back. That's Dorothy, eh? Dorothy, can you hear me? It's good to see you.
Certain things like I would like to put across. There are some cases where you find, like, I'll give an example of myself. I got pregnant I just gave birth in April, but it was kind of so hard for me to go for my leave because I was the only news anchor. I was the only maybe show host. And, you know, when you go to give birth, you feel guilty. You know, at your workplace, there's a way they make you feel guilty as though maybe you may not come for your job back, or maybe they are putting you on pressure to come back. And then I gave birth in the period where we were in lockdown. There were no borders to go, you know, and breastfeed my baby. It was terrible. It was terrible. And I'm wondering, okay, do we have a company car? Can they give me fuel, to go home and breastfeed my 2-month-old baby? But you find like someone will tell you there's no fuel for that. You either walk or you either do this. I mean, I don't know if there are some people from Western Uganda. It is a challenge this side. And then employment of, we are underemployed. You find like people are very few. Someone is doing 2 jobs at a go. You find you have no break. Let me say if you have an event, maybe you want to baptize your child, maybe you have a birthday for her. You feel like they'll give you 1 week. And you find that your family is not this side. My family literally is in Kampala. And anyway, it is a lot that is happening to us, the ladies who really love our jobs. Let me say if there is a media week happening in Kampala, I can't go. Why? Because I'm the only news anchor and I'm a radio show host. So they would rather give it to my editor who will go, and me myself, maybe I'll stay. So I really don't, there is that when it comes to ladies, this side really not prioritized. And it's not only here where I work from, but many other media stations that I know that are in Western Uganda. Thank you.
Barbara, can you react to that, and as we'll go back to the point you're trying to conclude with, as we chase time. The other things I was talking about, they are ready. Barbara, over to you.
Thank you so much, Dorothy. Dorothy?
Yeah, Dorothy.
Yeah, Dorothy. I feel your pain, but you see, the first thing I want to tell ladies here is that being female is not a disability. That is the one thing you should know. Do not put yourself down. Do not undervalue yourself. Do not undersell yourself. Do not lower down your standards when you're negotiating just because you're female. It's not a disability. The thing you need to know is that as a female, what skills do I have? What skills do I lack? If I lack these skills, can I get it? How do I get these skills that I actually lack as a female journalist? 2, what is my strength as a female journalist in this newsroom? Is my strength in features? Is it in hard news? Is it in sports? When I was in the newsroom, I did everything except sports. Everything. They sent me to Somalia, I went. The first time Uganda went to Somalia, I was there. On the 5th of March, I still remember the date, I was there. When Uganda was when we went to Garamba for the talks with Joseph Kony, I went to Garamba. I went to South Sudan. When they were talking about PRA suspects, in West Nile region, I actually missed the bus and I spent Christmas in a strange place. I've done borders. I've sat behind trucks of rebels. And I've done all this. Why? Because I'm passionate about it. What's your passion? What's your strength as a journalist in the newsroom? Chase for it, go for it. When they're saying Sean should go for it because he's male, no. As Esther, I have the skills. I've proven it. I'm going to go there and I'll prove to you that I can actually do better than Sean. Stand up for yourself. That is the one thing you should do. Yes. Do not undersell yourself. The other thing is that when it comes to balancing, I would like to tell Dorothy that I had a premature baby at 6 months. My baby was in the incubator for a month and a half in the hospital, okay? So I had to tell my boss, look here, I can't run from the hospital to the newsroom, from the newsroom back to the hospital. I either keep this job, okay, and be able to work from outside the newsroom before even COVID came, before people even started talking about, working from home. This was 2016. I negotiated and said, how do we work around this challenge that I have? I can have my laptop and I can actually work from the hospital while I watch my baby. That was negotiated. So do you have room for negotiations in your newsroom? If you have room for negotiations, even if you don't have, do not fear the female or the male editors that you have. Go to them and say, this is what I'm offering as a solution for myself. They will actually accept it because they will see it works in their best interest. Because these are actually profit-making organizations. They don't actually care, actually, whether you have a baby in the hospital or not. Negotiate that. 2, if you're actually, when you're in that situation and you feel there's no room for negotiation, can you actually start looking for a job elsewhere? Do not tie yourself in one media house, Okay? Look for a job elsewhere. If Linda here can offer you a job where you're able to balance between your family responsibilities and work, then please do that. But offer solutions. Don't also abuse that opportunity which has been given to you. Then the other thing is also your ability to deliver. Because most of us, you're like, okay, so it was my baby's birthday, it was what? And you have so many excuses. You are abusing the opportunity. You are actually abusing that goodwill. So deliver. When you're given that opportunity, deliver, deliver, deliver. And the other thing is persistence. If you pitch, they reject your story, go back and pitch to Linda. If Linda rejects your story, go pitch to Esther, because Esther is the features editor. If Sean is the hard news guy for politics, and he's not taking that angle of,
Again,
from the
me and
lens.
Esther.
Sorry.
It is okay.
Okay, let me look for, I'll look for another name, if I'm able to.
We go on.
But I'm making you popular,
Everybody
that is in here know you,
I'm
people
trying to
online.
cut
Yeah.
on popularity.
But that's the thing. But also the other thing for Dorothy is that nowadays we have so many opportunities with technology to actually self-broadcast. People are looking for content, quality content. Can you produce quality content? Jan here is not only organizing the Media Week, but they actually have connections of people who can actually fund your projects. Just like I said at the beginning, at IWMF, we actually fund women projects, up to $6,000 US. Go away for 6 months, and do that quality content that you will sell to CNN, Al Jazeera, sell to NTV, sell to, NBS, and actually you're able to negotiate. You say, my story will cost you 200,000. 2 minute or 1 minute feature, and you negotiate that. So please also self-broadcast. Take advantage of the new media, the new technologies that we have. And that is one way of becoming an entrepreneur. You're still a newsroom, but you're an entrepreneur because you're packaging your story. When you go for a press conference, package your story for Sean and give it to him. Package for Linda and give it to her. But you're like, from this story, which other, news features can I develop from this? Who else can I actually talk to? And you go expand that story, package it well, and sell. The other thing is that be multi-skilled. Can you take a photo? Can you actually do a multi-platform story? Can you do a video? Actually, nowadays we have smartphones. Buy a phone that will not only help you do WhatsApp and talk about the men and all the good things that we ladies love to talk about, okay? But you can use that story to video record, okay? And sell that content to someone. Package it very well. Sell your photos. There are websites that are looking for good photos, okay? You can do that. There are podcasts. People are actually nowadays buying podcasts. And to actually run a podcast, it's very easy. We all have towels in our homes, don't we? We have headphones, don't we? We have phones, don't we? Place the towel on the table, put your phone. Towels actually absorb sound, noise from the beginning, from the surrounding. You have clean sound you can sell to someone in the newsroom. So can we actually take advantage, do simple things that can actually help us create content and sell that content and make money while you're still in the newsroom? So that if Esther comes and says, you know what, you can't do this, you're like, yeah, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm jumping out. So self-entrepreneurship in the news.
Ladies and gentlemen, Women Count, Strategies for Media Viability Through Gender Mainstreaming. Our online audience, thank you very much for staying there. We love you and recognize you're watching. Our hashtag is still active, and please look out for all our social media platforms. Remember to share this content. It's very important information that is being given out. Our lunch break is long overdue. At 2 p.m. we are supposed to be having another session. A round of applause to Jen Angom, who has been online, please. And to Barbara Among, thank you very much for your contribution. Linda Chibombo, thank you very much. And the only daddy dinosaur, Joseph Akiso, thank you very much. It's been a brilliant session, I'd agree. I would like to say not so. Thank you very much for being patient, and generally, a general round of applause for all of us that are participating. We are going to go for our lunch break. So that we can come back at 2 p.m. Our lunch coupons are ready. I think you'll be able to pick one as you're stepping out. Watch out. If everything goes well, our next session, Innovation and Technology for Media Viability. This has interesting people, including Pindi Abbas, Fatboy, Paul Kirunji, Anika McGuinness. So watch out for that as well. Please, as you go through the door, you can pick your food coupon. As we take a break, stretch a little bit. And our panel, once again, thank you.